the South Burlington Development Review Board, pardon me, for Tuesday, already losing my voice, Tuesday, April 5th, 2022. My name is Dawn Philibert, and I'm chair of the board, and it's great to be back in person on this beautiful spring day. With me are fellow board members, Dan Albrecht, okay. Quinn Mann, Mark, I'm blocking on names tonight, Mark Bear, and Stephanie Wyman. And from the city, to my right is Marla Keene, who's our development review planner, and Delilah Hall, our zoning administrator for the city. So there are a number of ways to participate in tonight's meeting. One way is for people to come and sit in this lovely auditorium, or people can participate virtually, or people can call in. But in whatever way you choose to participate, if you wish to be considered a participant, you need to sign in on the guest book at the back of the room, or indicate online through the chat your contact information. And if you're calling in, you can send an email to mkeen@sburl.com.
sburl.com.
sburl.com. So thank you all for participating. If you are participating virtually, we would appreciate it if you would mute your camera, mute your audio, and turn off your camera until you want to participate, and at which case turn on the video, raise your hand, and we will call upon you, and then you can unmute yourself and keep your camera on. This meeting is being recorded, so it can also be watched down the line. We ask that you not use the chat function for conversations because it's not part of the public record. Please use it just to provide your contact information. Okay, let's start with emergency evacuation procedures. There are two doors on each corner of the back of the auditorium. If there was an emergency, exit through one of those two exits, and you can either go right or left to exit the building. I'm wondering if there are any additions, deletions, or changes in the order of agenda items tonight. No?
So Jim is recused from item number 8. I don't know if you want to bump up item number 9, the minutes, to get that done quickly before we move on to item number 8.
Does that make sense, board? Okay, so let's move on to the minutes of all the minutes, Marla.
Yeah, you can do that after item number 4, maybe?
And can we do them as a group?
Sure, if there's no edits.
Okay, good. All right. Are there any announcements to be made? Okay. Are there any comments and questions from the public that are not related to one of the applications we're reviewing tonight? No. Hearing none. Okay. It's time for us to vote on the minutes of January 18th, February 2nd, February 15th, March 2nd, and March 15th. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion made.
Thank you, Dan. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Mark. Is there any discussion about the minutes?
I found a typo, but I was told it doesn't change substantively, so.
Okay, I found a couple too, but yeah. All right. Okay, all in favor of approving those minutes? Say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. The motion is carried and the minutes are approved. Okay, so item number 5, we don't have to vote to withdraw it, do we?
Nope.
No, okay. The applicant for SP 22007 has decided to withdraw their application, so we will not be reviewing it tonight, which brings us to agenda item number 6. Let me read that for you. Continued site plan application SP 2206 of Reperio Properties to demolish an existing light manufacturing and retail complex and construct a 4,480 square foot extension to an existing licensed care facility on the adjacent lot. The subject parcel is an existing .71 acre lot at 1459 Shelburne Road. Are there any recusals or disclosures? Okay. Who is here for the applicant, please?
And Greg Dixon with Credit Lansing Consulting.
I think your microphones are off.
There we go. Great,
There you go.
thanks. Okay, raise your right hand. I'm going to swear you in, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Would you please give us, obviously, we've read the staff report, but please introduce us to your project and give us a little overview, please?
Yes, so we were in front of the board earlier this year. As we mentioned that time, we are proposing a infant care facility, which will be part of the Homestead School. It'll operate kind of as a campus feel, the two parcels together. They will share a lot of civil infrastructure and a lot of many different things. They will operate sort of as one business. That's kind of broad strokes overview. I'm sure we could hop right into staff comments or any other questions the board
Okay.
have.
Maybe this is for later, but I need to be walked through with a diagram what you're proposing, because it wasn't totally clear to me where the exit is. And when I drove by today, it seemed like a very small property. So could you do that now for us, please? Just
Yep.
kind of do a show and tell.
I think it would help if we went to the site plan, just the next page.
Great.
I think it's just the next page.
So that was the existing conditions plan.
Okay.
So the plan is to obviously take out all the infrastructure that was once the monument building, and there was also a dwelling unit on that property.
A what
A
unit?
dwelling unit.
Okay.
I believe it was a residential apartment. And so all of that will be removed. We are keeping some of the vegetation where we can, and the roadway will become a one-way access. So the roadway to the north of the building will only be one way into the property. And then once you get kind of around the corner by the stormwater pond in the back of the property, it will then be two-way from that point. And at that point, all cars will exit out of the original area for 1475.
So no car can come in through that exit, correct?
1475 will still be two-way. So that'll still, we widened that, I think in the summer of 2021 to allow for a little bit easier access coming in there.
Okay.
Will it be used as much as an entrance? I don't know. I think once people who use the facilities realize that it might be easier to just go one way,
Okay.
I imagine likely the majority of them will. It will be, but the coveted parking space for one building might not be the coveted parking space for another. So
I think it would help to add that the building to the south is more of ages 3 through 5, and the new building to the north is more of the infant toddler age. So you might not have somebody like coming in that entrance because they might be just using the southern building.
Okay.
And since our last discussion, I know last time we had a sort of written agreement with VTrans. We have gone ahead and submitted that permit. We have not received it yet, but it has been submitted. With no real comments from them at this point. So I am expecting that they'll be fine with it.
Thank you. So any other general questions before we dive into the staff report?
General question, how many of total parking spaces are there, and how many are there of those are quote-unquote employee spaces?
I don't think we really are signifying either employee or persons.
Put it another way, how many employees do you get?
So in the new building right now, I believe it's 10 employees for the amount of children that will be there. And then I don't know how many employees you have in your existing building.
Can I comment?
Sorry.
I need to swear you in.
Sure.
What's your name?
Jeff O'Hara, co-owner.
Okay, Jeff, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
As many are familiar with the daycare setting, there's very times that kids can go, there's half days and things of that. So at our busiest time, currently we have 5 classrooms with about two adults in those classrooms at a time. So at our busiest times, 10 to 12 staff at the existing building, and Greg was correct in stating there would be 10 at the busiest times of the new building as well.
Thank you.
If I could just add the other piece of it is, as you all also know, is parent drop-off is, when it gets pretty efficient, it's a 2 to 3 minute process. Kid gets out, goes to the door, goes in, and then the parent is out. So the flow works really well where we don't need many parking spots, long term.
I remember it well. Okay, so let's, so the way Marla has,
Mark have other
Yeah,
general?
just-
oh, I'm sorry, Mark, I missed you.
You something you said just triggered a question I have for you. When you say like the two buildings are gonna have two distinct different sort of like drop off procedures and all that, is there a connection between the two buildings for pedestrian for parents that have both children? Like where is that on the site plan? Because I see the sort of like the curved stone brick patio. You know, how if you're dropping off both kids, how does that work?
So yeah, we do have the sidewalk for the new portion, which you can kind of see. I think you were just mentioning that curve. But then there's also that striping kind of at the end of the parking lot is about a 3-foot sort of space that one could walk sort of around the playground. There will also be sort of gates on either side of the playground where they may or may not be utilized for parents who have multiple children. It's not... This plan makes it look a little bigger than it is. It's not a huge sort of a giant space, but that 3-foot sort of space between the parking spaces and the edge of the fence was always intended for people to sort of walk around a little bit
Okay,
easier.
so you do have to walk around the playground to go between the two buildings. There's no like direct connection.
There is a direct connection for staff. Whether or not that, I think that's up to Jeff and
Okay.
how they run their business on if they'll allow parents to kind of pop through.
Okay.
Yeah, our plan is to have just a swinging gate that will connect the two parcels, so that the parents would obviously be able to use that. And
Okay.
then, the back is actually the primary entrance for the existing building and will be the primary entrance, so it'll just be, walking the 75 yards or so between the two doors.
Okay.
Any other questions before we go through the comments? So Marla has written this report in a way that there are above-the-line comments and below-the-line comments. The above-the-line comments are, as I understand it, more major issues for us to learn more about tonight. And by the way, this is a site plan application. And then the below-the-line comments are more for us to just check in with you around, is this okay with you? Do I characterize that correctly?
Exactly.
Okay, good. All right, so let's, trying to get my screen to work right. Okay, comment number 1 is about the brick walkway and whether or not it counts toward your landscaping budget.
Can I comment?
Yes, please.
So we were a little bit confused by this question just because I think it mostly just talks about the front walkway of the building, which is really how everybody in the main public who don't use the building will see the building. So we actually felt that it should be considered as part of landscaping because it is kind of the face of the building. We also plan to add some gardens on either side of it, as well as quite a lot of landscaping. So we do think it will be sort of a a gateway to the building, even if that front door is not used a whole lot. So we did feel that it could be used for landscaping purposes, and it is a pretty small amount of the landscaping, which is on page the landscaping plan.
Okay, so there's a sentence that says if the playground or other site features are used, full details and cost information are required. And then in number 2, I think that we're interested in, and check me if I'm wrong on this, the differential between just plain concrete and the brick.
Yep.
What that cost differential is.
Yep. So I I did do a calculation. I was able to give this to Marla, but I know it was pretty recently. I think it was on the 31st. So I don't think she had a chance to give it to everybody on the board. I calculate that concrete, excluding all of the sub-base material, so just pouring a concrete slab, reinforced and finished, will run you somewhere between $6 to $7 a square foot. It used to be $5, but everything is more expensive now. So that is sort of how I did the calculation, and I assumed the higher value. So I assumed the $7 a square foot. So at $7 a square foot for both the back patio and the front walkway, that would run us about $4,970 for both of those to just do concrete. We got a quote from DeStefano Landscaping to do back patio, again, excluding the sub base. So this is just the stone. And that was for 4x8 Holland stone charcoal pavers. And for both areas, it was $12,211. The difference is approximately $7,200. I think on my plan set, I originally said it was about an increase, about $10 a square foot, and assumed that it was $7,100. So I sort of double checked that was pretty in the ballpark for what we were thinking.
Madam Chair, can I zoom in?
Please.
On the issues here? Just a couple questions for staff. Has the board at prior occasions allowed the sort of concept of upgraded pavers versus concrete?
Yes,
Okay, that's good.
To be counted toward landscaping.
yes.
I do have and this is more just for writing the decision. I do have challenges with the concept of limited visibility or limited anticipated use, only because, we look at a landscaping plan, we don't go through and say, well, how many people can see this tree or this bush, or let alone a paver, so I don't know if that. And then, so I just want to be clear when we get there, for the record, I'm saying that. And then, the playground seemed like would be like a weird thing for me to add, because it's like an intrinsic part of the use of this building itself. It's not I don't think of it as a landscape feature. So I'm just going to say that.
And we are not proposing that.
It's not part of the calculation?
No.
Okay, all right. Other questions about number 1 or number 2? No? Okay. Let's move on to number 3. I'm going to read this. Staff recommends the board require the applicant to increase the minimum tree size and recalculate the proposed landscaping cost, adding on-site plantings as necessary to achieve the required minimum landscaping budget.
So Greg, I know you sent me some stuff that I do have available. I just didn't look through it myself. So if there's stuff from that packet that you want us to pull up, we can absolutely do that.
Yeah, I'm basically just sort of reading what I
Okay,
sent, so which I'm happy to continue to do. We agreed with that on staff. I upped all the tree sizes to a minimum of 3 inches, and then reviewed some of the local nurseries for the cost difference, and it did increase everything up to, I think what's on there right now is $24,220, which exceeds what is necessary. In general, this project has no problem with the amount of landscaping. We want to meet that. I know there's been a lot of questions about it. We are happy to meet it. We will meet it. We're trying to put as many trees and pavers and keeping the existing maple tree. We are happy to do that, to continue to do that, to agree to meet that level of landscaping.
So I guess the question, and I'm sorry if I missed it because I was asking Delilah a question, but in order to close the meeting, you need to demonstrate it.
So it is on the updated plan I sent to you.
I think I have that, the landscaping page.
Yeah, the one that I sent on 5/31 or 3/31.
Okay, so she's gonna put that up.
I think it's C3103. If you zoom into the bottom where it shows kind of the landscaping breakdown, I guess it's called. So we added about, I think it's almost about $2,000 to that, the tree stuff. And we upped everything. So not only all the trees went to 3 inches, I looked at larger, all the other plants as well. You can buy 5-gallon plants instead of 2 or 3-gallon plants. So they're just more mature plants, cost more money.
Okay. Questions? Comments? Do you have what you need?
Yep, thank
Okay.
you.
So speaking of the maple, number 4 is about the 18-inch maple and the need to have a sediment control plan and an erosion plan.
Yep. So I did upgrade that plan as well on the 31st. I know I'm making you jump all the way around. One thing I'd like to point out is our ability to save this tree. We are very tight to it with grading. That is to make the walkways accessible and have them to be ADA accessible. So you can see that there is some tight grading sort of in that area. It will create a little hill kind of around the tree, which does limit what we can do as far as the drip edge, which I think was the comment of the town landscaper. In a perfect world, obviously, we would like to do that. In general, an 18-inch tree will likely have about an 18-foot drip edge. We cannot do that. That 18-foot gets to about the edge of the sidewalks on all those sides. But we are willing to add as much protection as we can. I added a note to my erosion prevention and sediment control plan, which I think is C.02 about that, and also added some more notes just in general about that. So as you can see, we kind of added some silt sock around where I could. It's not exactly to the drip edge, but I think it will be as best as we can do.
Board, comments, questions? Okay, I'm going to read number 5. The board has historically applied this standard across parking lots regardless of property boundaries. This criterion is not met for the parking lot shared by this and the adjacent parcel to the south. Staff recommends the board require the applicant to demonstrate how they will meet the criterion for the shared parking lot prior to closing the hearing. Staff anticipates the actual interior landscaping will be provided on the adjacent parcel to the south. So I have a question. The adjacent parcel to the south is where? Is that another business?
No, that's 1475. That's the homestead school that will be the older children.
Okay.
So
all
that's
right.
so I know this kind of looks like one massive project, but there is a property line that bisects these two properties
Okay.
right now. And so by south, I think she's meaning the existing property.
Okay. All right.
And so we are also in the process with Delilah and Marla permitting administratively the changes, obviously, on 1475. Because they are two properties, they require 2 permits. Because we aren't changing quite as much on that, we are doing that administratively. Recently, as of probably 4 o'clock last Friday, I provided a very quick calculation and a napkin plan outlining what I felt the calculations were, and that we kind of just barely met it for that southern property. And so I believe that's where we're at right now.
So I think your approach is, I think you're slightly misunderstanding the standard. Going back to the staff comment, and I can just read it, you don't have to flip pages. In all parking lots containing 28 or more contiguous parking spaces, at least 10% of the interior shall be landscaped islands planted with trees. The board has historically applied this standard across parking lots regardless of property boundaries. So the idea is it should be met for that parking lot taken as a whole, not on a lot by lot basis. And I did have the opportunity to take a look at the plan you sent over. And it looks like you just did it for the southern lot. That calculation needs to be expanded to include the parking lot as a whole, not just the portion on the southern lot. And because you have that island sort of in the corner, you may or may not meet it. It's difficult for me to eyeball it and say whether you do. So you may find that you need to add a couple or take out a couple more parking spaces on the southern lot in order to meet that. And you can do that as part of your adjoining site plan, and that's fine. I just wanted you to, go into that with eyes open.
Okay, but I just didn't understand why that would hold up this, and I know
It doesn't, no, and that's why I'm saying and not having the board discuss it, because it doesn't.
Okay.
But I just wanted to make sure that you don't walk out of here thinking like everything's all neat and
Yep.
tidy.
And I do think sort of with that pretty large island at the corner that we just discussed and kind of a lot of the other green space around the building, we're probably pretty close, but I haven't done that calculation.
Yeah, I don't think you can count the playground area, but I do
Not the
think you
playground area, like right in front of the building next to the handicap spots. We can count that, right? Because that's kind of like a green space. We don't need to do that. I'm happy to do more calculations to
Okay.
meet that, and the project will meet that. I'm not trying to get around it, sort of thing.
Okay. Questions, comments? Okay. All right, number 6. The applicant has, this is about snow storage. I'm not going to read it, but what are your plans for addressing snow storage?
Yep. So it's always difficult to know where somebody is going to plow snow without seeing how they're going to do it. My thought process for snow storage is that the plow would enter into the one-way and probably push everything down to pretty much the southern property line of the southern property. Per Dave Wheeler, we are not allowed to store snow within the pond itself, but he was amenable to letting us store snow in the swales. And so we do plan on storing snow on both the swale on the northern property line and along the western property line, as well as sort of along the southern property line. Which I do think was on the site plan. So, the other thing is, as Jeff mentioned, we might have some extra parking, and also the kids might like a giant snow pile. So there is also an option if snow becomes a really big problem, we have a lot of it, maybe taking away a parking space or two, creating a snow pile, and having that also be part of a play thing for the children.
Yeah, okay. Questions, comments on the board? I can see them loving it. Okay, now we're moving on to the below the line comments, so let's just move through these. Number 7 is, we need confirmation that the trees will be 2.5 inches.
I think with this updated plan, we're open to doing that, and
Okay.
it says it on the plan as well.
Okay, number 8. Whoops, I just lost it. Is the board, so the question is for number 8, is the board satisfied that the applicant is going to meet the provisions in blue?
Nope,
No,
not quite.
I got it, okay. Go ahead, Marla.
So this is about the aesthetics being compatible with adjoining sites and with each other, and just making sure the board's satisfied that it is.
Would you like us to comment?
Sure.
We had just written what was in blue, that the intent is that this building complements the existing daycare building, which has a more residential feel. There are multiple other types of buildings along Shelburne Road that also kind of have similar materials and horizontal clapboards and shakes that also kind of resemble more of a residential feel.
Thank you. Personally, I'm fine with it. What do other board members think?
I'm fine with it. I mean, I saw, the original submission. I think I was the one that commented that I'd like to see some improvements to it. And I think that your comment is spot on, that this stretch of Shelburne Road is all over the place. And I think it does blend in fine.
Yeah, good. Okay. Any other comments?
I defer to our architect of record.
I hate when you do that.
Okay.
Pressure.
Let's see. 9, did we? Yeah, I think staff recommends the board.
Condition sounds fine to me.
9, okay. Any other comments related to that? All right, number 10 relates to the one-way sign. What do you have to say about that?
We had no problem. We'll actually add another one, so there'll just be 3 on site. We do need the one in the front of the building. It's required by VTrans, and so I just placed another one on the updated set of plans where Marla requested.
Great. Thank you.
That's required? That's really interesting. All right.
He mentioned it. I don't know if it's required. They're not very expensive,
It's,
so
no, it's just a matter of interest. No criticism. It's fine. Just interested.
Okay, number 11 calls for more details about your fence.
So this, I might need your help, Delilah, on the sort of the report I sent to Marla. Our plan with the fence is to mimic the exact fence that's already currently out there. It's kind of a PVC style fence, but it's 4 to 6 feet tall, depending on, I think the higher is out by the road, but then as you're in the parking lot, it's a little bit lower, so parents can see their kids playing when they come. There's some pictures that Jeff took of the existing fence. It'll look exactly like that. The main fence that kind of runs in between the 2 properties now will be taken down, and the playground will be separated into kind of two separate playgrounds that will also could open up to each other, but kind of a big kid playground and a little kid playground. But between the 2 buildings, you'll be able to kind of walk freely.
Okay, any questions or comments about that?
Is that sufficient, Marla?
Yeah.
And won't those little kids be thrilled when they can move up to the big kids' playground?
That's our hope.
Okay, so we, do we have enough information to close this hearing, do we all think?
I would say we do. I defer to staff to make sure they have all the information they need. I'm satisfied.
All right, thanks. Everyone else? Yeah. Okay.
Make a motion to, close the hearing for
Well, we should make sure there's no public comment.
Oh, right, thank you. Before we do that, are there any members of the public that would like to comment? Okay, come on up. Tell us your name, please, and what comments you have.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Easton. I live at 101 Holmes Road, which is near to the applicant. I think the last time I spoke to the.
Excuse me. Okay,
It's not on.
It's a little blunt.
we're not hearing you like we should.
I can be noisy.
There we go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now we can, thank
So
you.
my name is,
Hear you. We just have people remote.
right, my name is Kathleen Easton. I live at 101 Holmes Road, which is in that neighborhood. Our small neighborhood consists of 10 houses on a dead-end street located across the railroad tracks and abuts Lake Champlain. And so the people in our neighborhood, quite understandably, being property owners and wanting to protect the health of the lake and the local area, try to keep an eye on other development in the area, particularly as it applies to stormwater management and traffic. And although I had a very nice conversation with Greg Dixon, and he kindly answered some questions, I just wanted to get a few comments on the record for the future. First of all, that our neighbors, myself, we very much respect private property and the right of people to develop their property responsibly. But we also like to protect our own properties and the local area. And so our concerns as far as stormwater management goes, we are downslope from anything that happens going toward Shelburne Road. All that water comes running down Holmes Road, where it goes into big culverts, then transitions underground and goes to a stream. And you had a hearing about that stream also not too long ago. That stream feeds into Lake Champlain. And there are also, on the west side of the railroad tracks, there's a large field that has several identified wetlands. And if you go through there or see it at different times of the year, you can see the collection of water. And all of that water has to go somewhere, down toward Bartlett Bay Road or Holmes Road. And so when a property comes in north of us, or I shall say, that's better, east of us, we want to know what they're going to do with their stormwater. Now, Densmore Monuments has basically been a dirt and stone operation for years. So it's a small lot, but the dirt and the plants were absorbing a lot of the water. When this development goes in, there's going to be a lot more impervious surface. And I just have some interest in seeing what will happen when you pile the snow up, as they described, along the 1475, I believe, property, the current preschool. If they pile that snow in that identified swale, then where's that snow going to melt? There is a culvert at the end of the Goss Access Road at the edge of the Goss property through which a lot of water flows. But that water's got to go somewhere, and I suspect it heads down to Lake Champlain. So as long as they are meeting the stormwater requirements and making all good faith effort to protect the watershed and the wetlands and the lake, I have no concerns about what they're doing. But I just wanted to get that on the record. The other issue, which Mr. Dixon has mentioned is no longer an issue, has to do with that 30-foot easement, which is required by the City of South Burlington LDRs. And it states, I think in the regulation, that part of the concern about that is to anticipate future needs, but also to relieve some of the congestion on the other arterials. Well, if you've ever gone down Holmes Road is not engineered to handle more traffic. I would say Route 7 is the appropriate egress point for any cars. And so when I drove up the road today, I counted the points of access that lead on to our approximately 1/8 mile strip of Holmes Road. And there are about 10 access points. And out of those 10 access points come residential cars, huge trucks from Farrell, huge trucks from UPS, test drive cars from the Audi dealership, cars from the fast signs from Orchard, veterinary, from the car rental, from Seaway. And I think that if any more traffic ever came out of the general area of Goss Road onto Holmes Road, which is directly across from Fire Department number 2 and also about 200 yards maybe from the major intersection, that it's going to create a more hazardous traffic situation there, especially as you have parents who they want to get their kids in, they want to get out, they're going to be in and out. So as long as there is no future plan to create some kind of an access from the new daycare onto Holmes Road, then I don't have any problems with this. But I think if there's going to be more traffic, then the city and its due diligence should conduct traffic studies and see what the impact of something like that is. But otherwise, I will say that the daycare center, I walk by there, has been a good neighbor to us. The children are delightful to see outside. They go on little traveling trips through the countryside with their teachers, collecting snow and plants. And so we would welcome any responsible new business to our neighborhood, and we thank you for the oversight that you're conducting.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other public comments? People here, people online? If anyone wants to make a comment, please turn your camera on and raise your hand. Seeing none, I guess we can assume there are no more. Okay, so what is,
Motion to close the hearing for SD-22-006, 1459 Shelburne Road.
thank you, Dan. I'll second that. Is there any discussion, board? No. Okay, all in favor of approving the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. The motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
We will deliberate, and you'll be hearing from us.
Thank you. Oh, I'm stuck.
Okay. All right, our next agenda item, number 7, is continued preliminary plat application SD 2119 of 600 Spear FJT LLC for a planned unit development on an existing 8.66 acre lot developed with 7,000 square feet, storage building and single-family home. The planned unit development consists of one 6.68 acre lot containing 32 dwelling units in 4 family buildings, a 1.24 acre lot containing the storage building and existing single-family home proposed to be converted to a duplex, and a third lot containing proposed city streets at 600 Spear Street. Any recusals or disclosures?
Just a disclosure, in my role at Chittenden County Regional Planning, I manage a brownfield assessment program, and we have provided support. Essentially, we paid for consultants to do site investigations there in the past. I know Frank from that.
Okay, any other
Yeah, I
disclosure?
worked with Frank, oh gosh, 20 years ago.
Okay.
But nothing current and was fine, and
Okay.
I don't think it'll
Good.
affect my ability
Thank
to
you,
be
Mark.
impartial.
He didn't rehire you?
Any, okay, so who is here for the applicant?
My name is Frank Von Turkovich. I'm here for the applicant. And we also have presenting tonight our consultants from Trudell Consulting Engineers, Lucy Thayer and Abby.
There.
Sorry, Abby. Yeah. So they're on remote,
Okay,
testifying remotely. Yeah.
all right. Would you all please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, give us, and we've seen this application before. This is continued preliminary plat. Please give us a little overview of what you're bringing us now, and then we'll work through the staff report.
I'll be prepared to discuss some of the items on the staff report. I think we're here tonight to explain some changes that we've made in response to comments that we received from the board the last time we were here. And probably Abby or Lucy could take the lead on that because I think they relate mostly to changes that we made to the stormwater management system and some other civil site features. So if you like, we can start with that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think the last time we saw this was in sketch plan, more of a sketch version, where we showed a layout change based on feedback we had received at our initial preliminary plat. Delilah, do you mind going to the site plan just so I can see what thank you. Yeah, so we have, the project is the same as what we had proposed in our initial preliminary plat, except it's reconfigured a little bit. So we have all of the same components. We have a new city street that comes off of Spear Street, goes north-south in approximately the middle of the development. We have the 8 fourplexes for 32 new units. We still are retaining a common space that's now in the center of our development that's been rearranged. We've revised our stormwater features and revised our planting. But in essence, this is the same project, just put together slightly differently. I think one other addition, one piece of the site plan that might be newer than our initial preliminary plat is we're now showing the solar development that is going to happen on the east portion of the project.
Toward the highway.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So this is
That we've always, yes. Go
this
ahead.
is a revised preliminary plat.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. Let me find number 1. So the first comment relates to the large steel building. And tell us about how you plan to screen that steel building and what the details are related to that.
Sure. So the steel building, let me first start off and say that the steel building is an existing structure that's part of the property today. And we saw it originally as a challenge for how we would incorporate something like that into a development like this. But as time has gone on, we're really convinced that it's an asset to the project. And I'd like to explain why we feel that way to the board and see if the way we envision it to be used effectively addresses the questions that the board has asked. It is not a historic barn, but it is essentially in size and bulk and shape very similar to the agricultural buildings that exist on the UVM farm just located to the north of this site. So its context in that set of buildings that are on Spear Street shouldn't surprise anyone. And in other words, it is, once you've seen it and you see it again, it sort of fills into the landscape. From the Spear Street viewpoint, the steel building is fairly well shielded or blocked by the white 2.5 story building that presently exists. There will be landscaping placed on the west side of the steel building to soften the view that will be going, that somebody might catch as they drive or walk up and down Spear Street. But on the other side of the building, on the east side, which is where it will have the greatest visual impact, with the change that we made to the project to take buildings and put them on the west side of the interior road. I don't know if you're looking at the plan now, but we repositioned those buildings and they effectively screened the view of the rest of the project to the steel building. But so our intention here was to work with what we have and not try to hide the steel building completely, although I think it will now have a lot more screening, but acknowledge that it's there and it's there for a reason. And I think it might be, in our view, helpful for the board to focus on how we intend to reuse the building and how it will relate to the project. And hopefully that will get everybody to where we think we need to be in terms of getting comfortable with the steel building.
So how do you intend to use it?
Well, historic use was as a contractor's yard for the Couillard family who built the building back in we believe, the 1980s. It has been used continuously for that type of purpose. When we bought the property, we moved into it with our operations and continue to use it today for similar purposes, although we've cleaned up almost everything that's out that had been stored outside the building. There were vehicles and debris, and there's still some dirt piles out there, but all of the residual debris from the contractor's operation has been removed, and we have done extensive environmental studies to make sure that there's nothing related to that was any kind of a threat. But going forward, our plan would be to continue to use it for our business purposes, but we don't need that much space. So the other uses that would happen in the building would relate to the development of the project. And the first use would be to build storage space inside the building for the tenants who occupy apartments in the complex. As most of you know, no one has enough storage, and people rent storage spaces, so we'll provide that as an amenity to people who live there. The other use would be for the on-site maintenance and management of the site. We also need some room to maintain and manage the solar field. So those on-site uses would use most of the building. The other amenity that we intend to offer is a small area for a workshop and a sort of a bicycle repair space for the tenants. And then an idea that we're still interested in as we all live through this evolution of COVID, and hopefully it'll be over, but if it isn't, and it requires people to be more, to stay in that work from home mode for a lot of us, we could build a business space in there that would be dedicated to people who live in the residential community. We're not asking the board to take that idea up, but we have mentioned it before, and we'd probably like to see if that's economically feasible, if those conditions continue. Yeah. So,
Thank you.
Is this criteria, is this all about the visual?
I think so.
Okay.
okay.
So I appreciate the detail on the use, because we were sort of like trying to not be sure that we did. So I guess, to my mind, that gets back to one of these architectural debates again. But to me, I'd be curious if, in other words, to me, is the problem, is the legalistic problem the fact that the new apartments won't look like the steel building, essentially?
Yes,
Why is this
though it
criteria
doesn't,
not being met?
though it doesn't require them to look the same.
Yeah.
They just have to be harmoniously related. And at previous hearings for this application, the board had said, well, I think Frank had said, we're going to reskin that building. And the board said, great, how? And Frank said, TBD. So a lot of this is coming from the fact that the board seemed uncomfortable with where it was left. And I didn't want this to be one of those things that like Frank thought was in the bag and the board was still deeply uncomfortable with.
Yeah, because my mind, to me, the standard is, it's like the same thing. I'm just like, well, can you put a gable on here? You put a little side window in here. You put some of this.
Well, right, and that's the question. Is the board asking for that? And if so, I think it needs to be clear to the applicant that the board is asking for some architectural sprucing up of this building before they walk out of this room and think that they have an approval for it to stay as it is.
Exactly with that.
Yeah, I'd
I
like,
appreciate your defense of the overall context of the building and we're painted red and similar colors,
Yeah.
But it is sort of one of those things of like, we're building, you're gonna have these great apartments, and so to what extent can you incorporate those elements? So when somebody looks by, it's like, and it reinforces the fact that the building is not a standalone thing, it's part of the community.
Right, I mean,
As if you were building it from scratch.
Yeah.
That's all.
maybe I can help. The reason I went into this long explanation of how we're going to use it is that I think how it's going to be used connects with how it should look. We're not trying to turn it into a fake old-style agricultural barn. I don't think that can be done. We don't propose to paint it red like the UVM barns are painted red, even though it might sort of get closer to what you see up the street. I think the color itself is actually a good color because it sort of disappears when the grass turns yellow and when the grass is green. It's this murky yellowish color, which we all may not choose as our first color choice, but as I've gotten used to it, I think it's not bad. I'm not presenting tonight to the board that we intend to reside the building or put new windows in or fake windows or anything else. I think the building actually has integrity the way it is. It's a steel building. And if someone had an idea, or the board has an idea for something we can do that's practical and if it's worth it, I'd be happy to hear that, but I haven't been able to come.
But I guess, and I'll just speak for myself.
Yeah.
I've seen the designs for the new apartments. And to me, what I think is like, no, we're trying to be pretty clear, like, the building does need some elements to tie it visually and architecturally into the 32 units. I think that's what we're saying.
Well, Dan, I hear that.
That's
and-
just me speaking, I'll defer to the rest of the board now.
And I'll just say one more thing, and then I'd like to hear what the board has to say to me. We actually designed the apartments to relate as closely as possible to what's going on the site, which was two-story buildings, to kind of relate in bulk and size to the existing white house that's there. The other idea was that the apartment buildings are designed to have sort of an agricultural-ish look to them. You know, we didn't do, we're not doing colonial-style clapboard and trim. It's fairly, we thought closely connected to what you might expect to see if you went onto the site. So we don't think there's a lot we can do to change the steel building that's.
So maybe we can look at some of the
Okay.
the elevations and
Okay.
talk about it.
Sure.
Because we want to give you the feedback. And
Thank you, yeah.
You want to do that now? Okay.
I don't see elevations for the steel building in the packet.
No, there are some photos. Do I?
Yeah, I saw some
photos.
photos.
If-
I mean, Frank, I'll tell you the thing that I like the idea that you're describing of the use of the steel building. I think it is a nice ancillary use to the overall site. You know, and I think it can be a nice amenity that's both functional and sort of forward thinking. The problem I have with the steel building is that it's too much of an industrial contractor steel building for 32 residential units where it's pretty much their backyard now. You know, you've got the two-story sort of colonial on the front of the site, then the steel building, and then you've got your 32 nicely designed, laid out sort of grid pattern development. I think what you've heard from the board and from almost day one about what we're looking for this building is some sort of redevelopment of the building that what you just described. And you have like, I think there's looks like there's like 6 large roll-up doors, you know, and a couple other things. You know, I think you need to look at it and come up with a plan that, yeah, it's fine. It's a steel building. Maybe it would be nice to be reskinned. But I think if you look at some way of like, because, you know, I think 3 of the large oversized roll-up doors, which were used for the contractor work, faces those 4 units or 8 units, you know, their backyards. I think this building could be very successful if it had more of a residential suburban feel to it. It could still be functional in the size and mass, but I think just in terms of the materials, it has to be a little more cohesive and a little more harmonious, which is exactly what the code says.
I appreciate that. And Mark, it wasn't a close call for us to say, let's keep the building. We could have said this is just a problem that, you know, there's no obvious solution to it, so let's demolish the building and break out the foundation and add that to the cost of the project and see where this takes us. We're really trying to avoid that because we really think that it should be repurposed. The building is by no means obsolete, ready for demolition. I mean, it has a lot of life left in it. What doesn't make sense to us is to spend a lot of money to turn it into something that's beautiful, because we think it's going to be well screened. We think it will relate in the ways I've tried to describe to the way people will live and work and exist in the project. Taking out the overhead doors, some of them actually are needed, and we like to keep them in place.
Yeah,
There's a
but I'm
driveway.
saying I don't know if
Yeah. I don't want the board to think that we haven't really thought hard about this. It's just there's no, other than just spending money to do something to it that doesn't have any seeming corresponding benefit to the people that are going to live there or how the building's going to be used. Nothing has, it's not obvious to us. And I don't know if the board appreciates that or has some reaction to that, but what could we do with this other than not have it be there, you know?
What color will the units be?
Well, the final colors haven't been selected, but it would be a palette of soft colors in some ways relating to the yellows and light greens and other colors that are on the other building, yeah.
Because if they were gray or taupe,
Yeah.
the yellow, to me, the yellow steel building would stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
So if there is some attempt to blend the colors, maybe that'll make it, I don't know. What do you guys think?
How many existing windows does the steel building have, and on what sides are they?
There's one, or actually there are two windows. They're in the office corner of the steel building on the southwest corner of it that face to the yard, and then the other window faces to the west. Other than that, there are no, height, first floor windows. Yeah, it being a
Right, because I mean, I get the siding issue, but if we were to take that existing building and put more windows in it, it would look, at least the roof line's different, but at least visually, if you were walking by, you glance at it or whatever, and you saw some windows on the west side and some windows on the east side, it would provide natural light space in there, west and east, maybe not the north side, obviously, but at least it would sort of blend in a little bit better now than just what you'd see now.
Can you do that with a steel building?
I don't know.
You can cut, you can cut windows in. Again, I would just point out to the board and to Dan, and I appreciate your comment, is that these would be changes that don't add any benefit to the functionality of it. They may, I think the thing that's going to help the most on our, this was the original plan, by the way, which you can see the building was very prominent in this plan. And I remember having these discussions with the board, but there was no, well, we hadn't come up with a formula then either, but the new plan will completely shield the building from the project, except for the backyards, which will be landscaped and fenced. I think the landscaping changes will make a huge difference. We could add more windows. I just, to your comment, Dawn, that's not a hard thing to do with a steel building. They can be riveted on, but we will just be adding more windows to the steel building.
Right.
I'm not sure that's the solution. Yeah.
Well, it's, I mean, for what it is, the standard is what it is, and so it's, we just went through the prior application talking about how how that was designed was looking at the other buildings around it to make it fit and all, and so this is a great retrofit, and it's an awesome project, and it's housing, and, you know, we supported the Regional Planning Commission, et cetera, but now we got the standard here, and it is what it is, so.
Well, the standard, we didn't create this though, Dan. This is an existing, not a project-created problem, if it is a problem, and personally, I don't feel that.
If this was if that building was a separate lot with a separate owner, that separate owner could be coming in here and saying, oh my gosh, this is out of character, and it's not harmonious to my beautiful Georgian, or whatever. So we're just relating the standard to you, Frank.
I appreciate that. I'm trying to understand how the standard was intended to apply. I think if we brought this project to you and said, hey, we want to build 32 units of housing in these 8 buildings, and we want to put up this steel building, then I think the board could rightfully say that doesn't relate. But having it being an existing feature of the landscape.
Right, but the difference here is that you're putting 32 new buildings as your subdivision, BD review, and this steel building has now become part of the project.
Yeah.
And to me, it just it doesn't feel like it fits, with these 32 other planned unit, grid residential units. That image where that's the old layout, the old rendering, that to me even had a better opportunity for blending harmoniously with the project because it was its own standalone area. But now that it's literally like the backyard of 8 of the units, I feel like you do have to spruce it up. You do have to make it blend a little more so that it doesn't, feel like this giant steel building in someone's backyard.
Could you do we have an ability to put up our current,
I'm looking for it.
Okay,
I
thank you.
don't know that page.
I don't think there is a rendering
See, oh, there's not a rendering.
the-
It was
of the new
referenced.
plan.
Abby sent me a little message and Lucy as well, and it's not in this package.
We presented it at the sketch plan hearing is when that would have.
This
remember
is
the-
Shown up.
this is from the sketch. You mean the like mid preliminary sketch that we did?
Yes.
Oh.
What was the date of that meeting?
Or do you have it? You
That
can
was-
share your screen.
No, we can pull it up now that I understand what the question is.
Oh, gotcha.
So, okay, I'll find it, Delilah, and you can kick it over.
Is that
to me.
December 7, Marla?
Yeah. Yeah, I can, okay.
Frank, the point I'm trying to get at in terms of harmonious with the rest of the neighborhood is, especially since you're talking about this building being sort of like a storage for the 32 units, possibly a workshop, bike storage, bike workshop, possibly future, home work areas, is I just think the building itself does need to be reskinned, which might cost some money, to have it feel like it's more of an accessory building to these 32 proposed structures that are going on the site.
Well,
That's helpful.
Yeah.
it's a Butler building. It had the roof trim, everything's integrated into the way this is built. It is literally a steel skin on the outside. We could, and it's, well, I appreciate your point, Mark. I really do.
I know. Is it a financial or is it a functional?
Well, from the functional point of view, this building requires very little maintenance, which is one of its beautiful features because you don't have to paint it and, fix rotten siding and do things like that. To put a non-durable material on it, like vinyl, which I think would be worse, honestly, and you probably do too. I mean, I'd have to think about what sort of modern-day materials could be applied that would make a difference. Paint would certainly be a possibility.
Right.
Eliminating one or more of the overhead doors, if that would help, if that would improve the symmetry or not, is always a possibility, but how do we fill those spaces? The cost to install like a glass wall inside one of those openings is really substantial.
Right.
And plus it allows you to see inside a building that's going to have.
No, but you could fill it in with the, the same skin, the same metal panel. And you might end up with, little reveal where the old door was,
Yeah.
The other thing, not supposed to design for it, but, you could do like a 36-inch high, like either cultured stone or thin stone veneer water table around the bottom to reduce or change the scale on the side facing the road and the side facing the houses and keep the back and the one facing the dumpster more uniform. But that would at least give it a little better scale feel to it for it being in a residential setting now. It's one thing when it was in a contractor, backyard of a contractor building where that was a functional, active work site.
We found the sketch now, or the aerial view, which, so, yeah. I think the landscaping and the parking and the reconfiguration of that space does make a big difference. It'll certainly have a much more approachable feel to it, because I think someone would be comfortable going into this building to work or store their things and use it for what its obvious purpose is. But we could certainly look at ideas like paint and making a decision whether we need to have all 4 of the doors. Adding windows, if there are places where more windows would make it more, it'll have that modern look, I suppose. We could do things like that.
You know, especially you've got all these overhead doors, and some, you know, I see one, I think on that rendering, you know, the truck's backed up to it with the striping, which means that it's meant for actual loading and use. You have other ones where it's, you know, just in a sidewalk, you know, and it's one thing, I'm sure that it was meant for trucks to drive in, go into the building, you know, and actually use it for vehicle storage and vehicle use. It doesn't seem like that's going to be the current use of the building.
I would agree.
So I think, you know, you don't need all those overhead doors. It seems like there's what, 5 of them? 2 on the side that we can see, 2 on the side facing the houses, and 1 on the far side facing the dumpster area.
Yep.
You know, maybe you end up only keeping 2. You know, 1 on either of the long sides for where the dumpster is, and the you know, on the far side, and then on the front where you look like you can access it, and then you close in 3 of them. You know, maybe some of that gets some glazing to allow some natural daylight into it. Some of it just gets filled in with, you know, the same metal panel system that's currently on the Butler building.
I think what we're trying to get at is making it, and I don't want this to sound offensive or critical.
That's okay.
Making it less of an eyesore.
Yep.
And blend in more with the new buildings. So there's not as much of a dichotomy. You know, there's the still building here, and then these lovely new units.
I'm happy to look at those ideas, and some of the, and I know it's not your job to solve our design problems for us, but I just, we can't keep coming back with nothing because you're asking the same question and we don't have a good answer for you.
Right.
At some point, I think the board has to tell us whether we can build this project with that steel building or whether we can't build this project because of the steel building.
I have not heard anyone express you can't build this project with a steel building.
I know.
It's more about what kind of modifications can you make to this building to make it more compatible with the architecture of the homes or the units.
No, I
I'd like to
appreciate
see it
that.
more feel like it's an accessory building for this project,
Right.
rather than an afterthought that you designed around.
Okay.
Are we ready to move on, or do you feel like you need more direction from us? You've probably had quite enough, but.
No, I appreciate what the board has said, and we're happy to continue to work on this. We'll see where we end up. You know.
Okay, thanks. Let's move on to number 2. And this relates to the, I don't really have a grasp of this, but Marla, could you summarize this, please? It's about
Sure.
the impediments to,
Sorry. So there's a planned right-of-way, a planned public roadway. And so the planned public roadway can't have private features within it. And so there's a few things that are within the planned public right-of-way that can't be there. The reason this is an important comment for the board is that at a glance, it looks like moving some of those features, particularly the 2 storm basins at the bottom of the page, may impact the design of the project. So, you know, I don't think relocating a transformer is really going to change the way the project's designed, but if they have to reconfigure the site to get those storm features out of the public right-of-way, the board may want to I guess we want to hear from the applicant on what redesign is going to be necessary to accomplish this, so that the board can decide whether to close or whether to keep it open and get that taken care of before closing preliminary.
Lucy, Abby, I'll go ahead and try to respond to that, but definitely chime in if I get it wrong. We don't have a problem moving transformers if they were located in the right-of-way. That was an inadvertent mistake, and we can take care of that. The two ponds that you see at the entranceway, the entrance driveway to the steel building, those do encroach, at least the slope of those, the grading of those ponds encroaches by a couple of feet, I think, into the intended public right-of-way. It's amazing that that actually does create a design problem for us, because to still maintain that size of pond, it's just difficult to lengthen it or change it. So one thought is, we are in conversations, and we've had discussions with the university that owns the property to the south, of moving the right-of-way, keeping the road and all the sidewalk in the right-of-way, but shifting the right-of-way itself 10 feet to the south, which would take those features out of the public right-of-way. And we expect to be able to make that arrangement with our neighbors, and if that's okay with them, I think we've found a technical solution to an encroachment problem.
How likely is that to happen?
It's very likely. We have had these discussions with the university. There are a few things that they're benefiting from with the project, including the access through the project on the north-south interior roadway. They were also amenable to the idea of us installing street trees originally on their land, so that they could help with their tree plantings along the roadway. So I'd say the chances are very good that UVM will agree.
Okay. Board members, questions?
Lucy, Abby, anything else to add to that, or did I cover that?
No, Frank, good job. That is our solution, is just simply moving the right of way
Okay.
to around our bioretention basins. The only mistake you did make is that they're not ponds. They won't be wet.
Right.
They'll be planted depressions called bioretention basins. And the other place that there was some encroachment is on the north side of the north-south street, but there is room to shift those two basins either to the east or to the west,
Okay.
pretty easily.
Right. Yep.
Board, questions, comments? Okay. Number 3. Trying to read my own writing here. How will the trash collectors access the toters?
Each building will have an enclosed area at the back, in the middle of the passageway between the two halves of the building, where the toters will be stored. So what we're trying to do is decentralize the rubbish collection system. We don't like the idea of doing large dumpsters and things like that. So each building will have a pickup by the rubbish hauler, and they will pull the totes out, empty them, and put them back in.
Like many of us do on our own homes.
Exactly.
Okay.
The rubbish hauler will go to the units to get the totes?
Not to the units, to the first floor, the
Or
rear.
the rubbish hauler will actually go into that vestibule area?
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
Not like our homes.
no.
No.
Not like our homes at all.
Oh,
Oh, I thought you said that residents would roll it out. The
No,
trash-
the rubbish hauler will roll it out.
Oh.
Wow.
Send them to my place.
Yep.
were you using?
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, number 4, building costs. Staff does, however, recommend the board ask the applicant to confirm the above building cost remains in the correct ballpark.
I hope we're in the ballpark. We haven't done a formal reprice since we've been involved with the events of the past couple of years, but if there's been a shift, we would come back to the staff and tell them. We'll have to do the same thing with Act 250, where we're using our best estimate right now, but if it changes, we will have to present that information to the city, and if it changes our landscape requirement, we'll deal with that proportionally.
Board, are we good with that? Okay. Number 5, curbs should be required. Staff recommends the board require curbing in the locations identified in the report.
There is the parking area on the north side of the project, which runs east and west. We agree with the recommendation that we install a curb between the parking area and the sidewalk, and that's something
Okay.
we can do.
Okay. Moving on?
I believe that was the only place, right, Abby, that we,
Anywhere that would be in front of a parked vehicle, we agree that we can curb.
Okay.
So between the buildings and the parking spaces, or the in front of the parking spaces that are facing north.
Okay. Thank you. Number 6, this is about the north-south streets extending to the property line. It looks
yes,
like you've
that's
taken care of
something
that.
we will do.
Number 7, the green space between the street and the sidewalk on both sides needs to be on both sides.
We talked, our group talked about that the other day. The reason we haven't done that is that in the future, could you put up the site plan again, or the most recent version? Yeah. Yeah. There's parking planned for one side of the street. The east side of the street, the north-south street. In the event that we ever realize we need more parking, setting it up this way would allow on-street parking, parallel parking to be constructed on the west side of that street. That's the
Yeah.
main driver for that design choice, but otherwise.
I get where you're coming from, Frank, but if the city plows the street because it's a public street, then the snow gets pushed onto the sidewalk, and then they come along and plow the sidewalk, the snow gets pushed onto private land, which we can't do. So that's why we need that green strip.
Okay.
So I totally get where you're coming from, and I wish I weren't that way, but that is the situation.
I'm looking at my engineer. Are we?
Yeah, we can modify that.
We can, yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
can,
Yeah, we'll make that
we
change.
can do exactly what you're asking us to do, then we can.
Or you can
shift it up.
convince the Department of Public Works to plow in a different way, but, that's on you. I'm not gonna
I'd rather
die on that
make a
sword for
design
you.
change, yeah. We can make that change.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I think that's it.
Can I just make a comment?
Sure.
So I had a quick question. On sheet C2-02, I just saw a hydrant that looks like it's within your future access to the solar area, the driveway there that kind of connects around from the road. And so I just kind of wanted to point that out and either recommend that you adjust the access to the solar area to not have your hydrant right in that drive lane, or slide your hydrant either. I mean, I don't know how much space you really have there between the property line to keep it on your property, but
Yep. Is that it right there?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I see right where it is.
we can move that to the other side of the sidewalk, I would think,
Any?
Yeah, we have a few things to work out with Public Works, some comments that we
Thank
need
you.
to respond to.
Yeah, for spotting that, yeah.
Any other questions or comments before we ask for public comment? Thank you, Frank.
Thanks.
Are there any members of the public who would like to comment? You see any online, Delilah? Seeing none, I guess we will.
So the board should decide if they're sort of going to let the applicant or close the hearing and have the applicant come back with a proposal for the steel building. If the board does that, I would suggest some language, and I don't think this is outside of what the board has done on other projects, but I would suggest the board include in the decision some of the language that we talked about tonight about, what improvements need to be made to make the steel building have a harmonious relationship as required under the regulations, or alternatively, you could keep it open and they can go work on it a little bit.
I think we should put it to the applicant are you prepared to come back to us with addressing of the comments we've made tonight?
I think we are. We everything that was brought up tonight are things that we think are doable without sort of blowing up the scope of the project and what we think is possible for us for the steel building. I think we can. And if we can't, then we would ask them.
Putting it as a language of the condition.
Okay, other people? Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
I will make a motion that we close preliminary plat application SD 2119.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor of closing the hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the following project. Sketch plan application SD 2204 of UVM Medical Center to construct a 1.5-story, 84,000 square feet medical office with associated parking, equipment, and stormwater treatment on an existing undeveloped 13.5 acre lot at 119 Tilley Drive. Who is here for the applicant? Yep. Okay. Do you want to move up to the table closer? And is there anyone who wants to recuse himself or has a conflict of interest?
I have neither, but I'll just, in the interest of disclosure, Gail and I have been talking on the phone every other day on some work-related stuff, so eventually
Okay.
I have brownfields related redevelopment.
Do you feel you can be impartial? Okay, thanks. Any other disclosures or, okay. So,
Jim, were you going to recuse from this one, Jim?
Jim? Here. Jim Langen?
I was muted. Yeah, I was muted. I'm back here. Yes, I'm recusing myself.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Okay, who is here for the applicant, please? Introduce yourself.
My name is David Kelty.
Dave?
I'm the Director of the Facilities Planning and Development for the UVM Health Network.
Okay, thank you.
Gail Henderson King. Sorry,
Is anyone else going to be testifying?
It's possible if they're called upon, so you probably want their names.
Yeah, we don't need to swear people in, but getting their names would be helpful.
Oh,
Thank
it's a
you.
sketch, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Could you tell us your names, please?
My name is Thomas Morris, and I'm with E4H Architecture.
Thank you.
Derek Reed, I'm with Present Lansing Consulting Engineers.
Thank you.
And David White, President of White and Burke Real Estate Advisors.
Thank you.
Bob Bouchard with Pizzagalley Properties.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is a sketch plan, which is kind of the first step in the process, and it's an opportunity for you to give us an overview of your project and for us to focus on more kind of big picture issues,
Right.
so that you can go the next step, having some feedback and guidance from the board.
Yeah, so we thank you very much for the opportunity to present this project to the board. I'd like to also thank Marla and Paul for input they've given us as we've been going through the planning process. But I guess I'll start with, why the need for the project. We have been contemplating an outpatient surgery center for some time. It's in our master plan. We didn't anticipate that we'd be doing it this soon, but with the issues that we've had at the Fanny Allen campus, that you probably have read about, with the closure of the ORs a couple times over the past couple of years, that coupled with the surgical demands that we're seeing now, maybe some of it was the post-COVID pent-up demand, but our market projections, if you take a look at the demographics and such, suggest that we're going to require more operating rooms. Currently, we have 5 outpatient operating rooms on the Fanny Allen campus, and they're really quite small. They're really limited to what I would say relatively minor procedures, ophthalmology, hand, wrist, that type of thing. The type of surgeries that we're contemplating for the new ambulatory care center, or OSC, outpatient surgery center, are more complex. They involve more sophisticated procedures throughout a number of clinical surgical subspecialties, ophthalmology, orthopedics, OBGYN, and a number of other disciplines, general surgery, and that require a much larger operating room space, bigger operating rooms, and more equipment. So taking the fact that, we've got the issues at the Fanny and our demographics and the need for creating better operating room capacity and facilities, that drove our planning. The Tilley Drive site has been, we've been in that location now for, I think, almost 20 years. Our first building was cardiology, and we have several facilities in that location. But when we were looking at a potential site for this, we looked at several sites, including at Tech Park and some other areas. This site that we ended up selecting was chosen partly because of the permitting work that Pizzagalli Properties had done previously with respect to building on that location. It did quite a bit of due diligence in terms of what the permit requirements. And I believe, and Bob is here to confirm it, I think they received essentially all the permits and the Act 250 permitting, and then the permitting was withdrawn. We kind of picked it up because the site looked as though it had the right size. I would tell you the geography of the site, the topography is extremely challenging, and that gave us some concern. So we've entered into a purchase and sale agreement with Pizzagalli Properties that we would purchase the property if we're able to complete our due diligence and obtain permits for the property and receive certificate of need approval, which where the current status of the project is. We're just finishing up schematic design, and we're in the schematic pricing, and we're anticipating submitting a CON application within the next few weeks that will describe the project at a schematic design level and all of the needs for the project in terms of the cost estimate and equipment and such. We have to submit that project. We expect nominally, hopefully less than a year, but up to a year for review and approval. So obviously that presents challenges in this current environment in terms of holding your estimates and such. And so one of the reasons we were here, because we wanted to introduce the project to you, given the amount of resources that we're going to commit to this, is to try to get an understanding that we're on the right track here. In order for us to feel comfortable to go forward to the next continuing design and completing our CON application. So we want to make sure that we're in the ballpark here, and that we've anticipated everything that we need to anticipate if we're going to be permitting and building this project. I would say that a goal for me in talking to the board this evening, and you have to decide this, but to get some clarity on the direction we're going so we have some confidence moving forward with the next step. So thank you for your consideration. I'm going to turn this over to Gail for more detailed discussion and response to the staff's questions that were provided to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. So as Dave had said, we've been working on this project for the past several months, and we've been working with city planning staff as well as we've been meeting with the neighbors and getting input on this. And the whole reason that we submitted this sketch plan application is there are some pretty important issues that we need to get some clarity on in order to move forward with the project. And we had outlined those in the project narrative that we submitted to you, as well as some of the other backup information that we've provided. So that's really our goal tonight, is to get your input and clarity on these issues, so we have some understanding of how this project would be reviewed as we move forward.
Great. Do you have anything else to add? Before we start going through the staff comments?
I have a presentation. Is that possible to?
Sure, okay.
Okay. So I'm going to walk you through kind of the existing conditions on the site and some of the site constraints that we've had to deal with, walk you through the project, give you an understanding of the building and site requirement program that we've come up with, or that the medical center has for this, how we have applied those and come up with this project, and then open it up for your comments, obviously. So if you could put up the existing conditions plan that we submitted.
Not what you sent late today.
No, there's just a topographic plan that was submitted as part of our package. Thank you. Yes, perfect. So this is the entire lot. It's lot 6 within the Mountain View Business Park. Obviously, north and south are not up and down on the sheet. They're left and right. So left is south, right is north on the site. Tilley Drive is on the south side of the lot on your left.
Wait a minute. Could you highlight where Tilley Drive is? I'm not quite oriented.
Sure. Tilley Drive is running along the left side of the sheet. Here, I might
Yeah,
can
that's
I
what I
use
did. I know. Yeah.
It'll line up with the rest of the drawings. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
North is always up.
I do have a little pointer if you look at the screen.
Yeah,
Of course, it's
might
not.
be
And
good.
we can do that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say we.
This is Tilley Drive right here. This is the Red Barn Deli. This is Maytree Healthcare. This is Poor Farm Road, Old Farm Road, sorry. Old Farm Road.
Where is Old Farm Road?
It's
On the west.
it's right here on the west side of the
Oh, I'm
site.
not. Oh, that's funny. It doesn't show.
It's kind of right here. Yeah,
Okay.
it's not on the
Got
whole
it.
site.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the O'Brien Eastview Development borders the site on the north right here. This is lot 2, lot 2 of the Mountain View Business Park, and this is the Maytree Healthcare for orientation. Does that help everybody understand?
Yes.
Super. So first, there's a 100-foot Green Mountain Power right-of-way that runs through basically the middle of the site here, which has poles and overhead lines on it. And within that, there's also a 20-foot green Champlain Water District water main easement that runs through the site as well. So between those two, there's very little that we can do with disturbing and changing the grades within that area. So that really kind of divides the site in some ways into 2 areas as a result of that. You'll also notice there's these little outcroppings here in various points. There's ledge on the site. Some of it is exposed, but it's pretty consistent throughout the site. So that has been an issue that we've had to deal with and work around. Topography between the west and the east side of the site, it's sloping to the east. There's anywhere from a 26 to a 30-foot grade change on the site, west to east. And then north to south, there's roughly a 20-foot grade change. So there's a lot of topography. The lowest part of the site is on the east and right down in this area. So there's been, a lot of things we've had to deal with. There's also 2 Class 3 wetlands on the site. There's one here on this little portion of the site, and then another one here. This wetlands is under 5,000 square feet, so it's not regulated by, under the South Burlington zoning. This wetlands here, this class 3 wetlands, is a little over 10,000 square feet, so it is regulated under your regulations. Both of these wetlands, we have had a wetland specialist, Gilman and Briggs, review them, delineate them. They're isolated wetlands, they're not connected to each other, and they're not connected to a water source, and their functional values are minimal, if anything. So they're pretty, they're not actively doing a lot for any stormwater. Again, the site is sloping all down to the east, so they're not performing any real major stormwater collection issues right now. So those have all been constraints that have been involved with looking at this site, in addition to the zoning requirements for this site. Obviously, there's the setbacks. The building needs to be facing the front of the lot on proposed or existing road. So in this case, we've got an existing road and a future city road over here, so we end up having 2 front yards on this site. So really, the building has to go here. It really can't go on the northern part of the site, because then we'd have all the parking in the front of it. There's currently an access, a shared access that crosses over this lot on lot 6 for access to this lot here with the Red Barn Deli, and it was anticipated and it was proposed as the access to the site in the previous approvals for the project. So with all those constraints, really the building program here, the program for the site is looking, trying to be a patient-centric criteria is important for the medical center for this project. They need to have good access for the patients to the site, helping the patients in and out of the site, making it easily accessible, and having clear access and views for the project from Tilley Drive. They want to have the building oriented for natural daylight. Needs to be ADA accessible for the main entrance, but also ADA accessible from the parking areas to the building as well, for the patients as well as for staff. The loading area needed to be separate from the entry area. So the building is proposed as a 2-story building. The first story of the building and the access, the front door of the building is right here. The entrance comes in off of Tilley Drive. This is the drop-off area. This is the front entry to the building. This is the main floor of the building. This is where the operating rooms and all the clinical staff and everything are. That's the whole entire first floor at that grade. There's a lower level of the building, which is this part here. It's not the full building, and this would be the loading dock and staff entrance into the building. The design has been, the design for the loading area has been set so that the vehicles accessing this can come in, access this loading dock, and go back out, and not go in at all to the parking area that will be used by patients and staff. And that was a pretty critical thing. We also wanted that loading area to be away from the residential neighborhoods on the west side of the site, as well as they'll eventually be on the north side of the site. There is a requirement in the zoning for an increased buffer setback for abutting the residential neighborhoods, so that will apply to the west and the north side of the site as well.
May I say just one thing?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Your pointer. How do you put the button here? Make sure to push the right button. So as Gail was talking about the at grade level, the first floor is the front end of it is the drop-off area, patient reception, waiting, and so on. As you go back into the space, you go into preoperative area, and in this general location, people go into surgery, and they come out to a post-operative area. And they will be recovering from anywhere from a couple hours up to 23 hours. And they'll be leaving the site through a separate exit discharge in this location so the incoming and outgoing traffic aren't commingling. The loading dock looks pretty good size, and it is. And it's really designed to handle clean supplies coming in and dirty supplies going out. There is not a lot of truck traffic. There is incidental traffic to drop off clean linen, clean supplies, and then the dirty side, which is principally dirty linen and waste and recycling. But they're not. This is not a trip generator in terms of constant coming and going. They're there to make sure that we can drop off the right amount of material at the right time, and we can pick up the dirty and take it out. So it's big. It's largely big because we have to have areas for separating clean from dirty, and you cannot commingle. So we need twice as much dock as a normal other type of similar office building. Miguel mentioned the loading dock is here and the staff entrance. That's true, but the biggest use on this area is our central sterile reprocessing, which is oriented directly below the ORs. And that way that works is sterile items are brought up into the OR core from below. There you have the surgical procedure, and then the dirty utensils and other items are brought down. So there's a vertical relationship between the ORs and the central sterile supply below. That seemed to work out in this location for a couple of reasons that we'll get into, but I just wanted to make sure that folks had an understanding of how the building was going to be used. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So, again, as I was saying, that this is the entrance, the drop-off area. We have handicap parking and some other parking spaces up here to be able to accommodate that drop-off and pick up for patients coming in and out of the facility. There's also parking up in this area for patients to park, and then most of this will be for staff parking. There's a series of interconnected walkways from the parking area to the building, from the building to Tilley Drive. And there's a proposed future connection and a little overlook here to connect into a future bike path or rec path when that's built out here on the future city road. The whole east side of the site here in this area is the stormwater treatment gravel wetlands. Again, as I was mentioning earlier, the whole site is sloping this way, so the water is collected and treated here on site before draining into off-site areas. Another piece is that for this building, there needs to be a series of mechanical equipment structures. They're not structures, they're equipment that are related to the building that are out here in the site. They need to be in close proximity to the site. We included in the packet for you examples of what those different MEP structures look like. We have chillers that are needed, oxygen farm, a generator, transformer, and those are all out here in this general area. Again, yes, if you want to show those images, that would be perfect. These are examples of these structures either at the UVM Medical Center campus in Burlington or at the Fannie Allen campus. This is an oxygen farm example. If you can just keep scrolling. Yeah, this is up at the medical center. Example of what that looks like. If you go to the next page. Oop. All right, there's
Is there any chance that this would be more appropriate to talk about when we get to the staff comment about the equipment?
Well, we wanted to be able to show and talk about, the need for these and why these are here.
Okay.
If you would like to jump back to the site plan, that's fine.
So shall we start with the staff comments, going through the staff comments?
Well, there's a couple other things I'd like to point out on the site plan, if we can go back to the site plan, is that?
Sure.
Super, thank you. So again, we've provided landscaping. Some issues that we found out from the neighbors were that they really wanted to have screening and privacy from the project. So there's proposed berms and landscaping from evergreens to mixture of other landscape plantings in those areas for the neighbors. There's an existing windmill on the site that there's some sentimental value attached to that. So we've ended up relocating it into one of the islands here for a couple of the neighbors that would like to be able to see it. And then one of the boulders that's out in this area here has kind of been dubbed the Neff Rock. There's some fond memories of the Neffs playing on that rock growing up on the property. So we've worked around and kept that boulder there for them. Then in terms of so we talked about the rec path connections. At one point we had talked about trying to provide a rec path on the site and connecting it somehow through the site. When we discussed this with the neighbors, there was a lot of opposition for that being on the west side of the site, and there really wasn't a whole lot of options that we could come up with at the moment for this. So we will commit to working with the neighbors in the city on trying to come up with a reasonable solution for that, but we would ask that it not hold up this project to move forward. We think it's going to be a challenge to make that, to come to some resolution on all of that. But as the future path will connect somewhere out onto Tilley Drive. There already is the Tilley Drive bike path that exists, a rec path that will connect over eventually to Community Drive and does connect out onto Heinsberg Road. For the future road connections, there's the O'Brien Eastview project has a proposed road dead ending on the north end of this site. And one thing I forgot to mention is this portion of the site on the north end here, we are proposing that to be permanent open space. There are no plans to do any future buildings or any expansion on the site. This is this is all that we're going to be able to do on the site. So this would be proposed as open space, and however, how we will commit to working with the city and the O'Brien brothers to make that connection somehow through to this future city road. Regarding the future city road, it's proposed on Lot 2. There's already a 100-foot wide easement shown on the Maitrey property when they got approvals, and the intent was that it would connect here to wherever the O'Brien Road is coming. We have very briefly looked at that to see if that could work to go around the wetlands. There's Class 2 wetlands on this site. It appears that would work. There may be some impacts to the Class 2 buffers. We could potentially work on the northern side of the site here to make any adjustments, but this road is not on this project. It's not needed for this project. We're not making, we don't have any relationship to that. And so again, we will work with the city and with Pizzagalli Properties on that, but it's not part of this project. At one point, we had looked at potentially having an access out onto that future road, and it was really early on when we were looking at the site and thinking about how logistically it would work in terms of deliveries and the vehicles accessing the loading dock, but realized that it really wasn't needed. We could accommodate everything on the site, so that's why there's nothing shown. For this project, we don't need it. We're working with a traffic engineer now to verify that we can accommodate everything on the site and be able to handle the traffic in and out of the project.
Gail? Mm-hmm. In the interest of time, a lot of the things you're talking about now are things that we will be covering with the staff report. so which you've seen. So I'm wondering, are there any things you'd like to tell us before we dive into the staff report and deal with these specific issues?
Sure,
Just the elevations. I think.
Yes, yes, and say that's the last thing. Can you pull up the elevations that we sent in today, please? So this is the site plan showing the 100-foot Green Mountain Power right-of-way through the site. And we thought just for being able to show the site a little bit better, we've created two cross-sections, one from west to east, this A, and from north to south, B, so you can get an idea of how we've designed this building to fit into the site, given the constraints that there are in the program that we're working with. So if you can go to the next slide. So the section A here, this is west to east on the site, so the Red Barn Deli is over here. This is the property line. That you can see here, we've marked where the Class 3 wetlands are and the wetlands buffer. This is the driveway in. This is the driveway for the drop-off area to the building. And then here's the building, again, showing the 2 stories with a second story kind of down at the lower grade. And then this is the area that we need for those gravel wetland stormwater treatment areas. And then the property line here on the east side. And the dashed line here shows the existing grade, and we're dropping from the west to the east over 26 feet. And so really the project has been designed to fit into the site, given as much as we can, working with the constraints that we have with the site. For section B, this is from north to south, so this property line, this property line here, this is Tilley Drive out here. And again, the site is sloping up, and we've got a 19-foot grade change between just above the parking lot. This is the upper parking lot. This is where the Green Mountain Power right-of-way is. This is the access down to the loading dock areas, and again, this shows the 2 stories of the building. And the reason we felt that it was important to show this is so that you get an idea of the grades and how we've worked to get this building to fit into the site the best you can, with having to disturb as the least amount of ledge as possible on the site. There is a lot of ledge on the site, and there is ledge underneath the building. So we just are trying to be conscious of that and get this building to fit, make it all work here on the site, which we believe has really come out pretty well. But one of the comments in the staff report was to say, could we have this entrance that's on the west side of the
Gail,
building on the
excuse
east
me,
side?
Gail. Could we wait for that till we come to the comment?
Sure.
Okay, I think it would be much easier for us to absorb this
That's
if
fine.
we do that. Okay, thank
We'll
you.
leave that up there, though.
Okay, oops. So,
He went to the, he didn't want to use that.
okay, all right. So so I was a little confused myself. This is a sketch plan, but in the permit history, is it really a site plan, Marla? I wasn't clear about that.
Yep, so this is an optional sketch plan.
Okay,
Any applicant is welcome to come in with a sketch plan.
okay. All right, the first comment. And this is about the open space. Does the applicant want to preserve the open space? It sounds like you do.
Yes,
Yeah.
we have agreed that, yes,
Okay.
that northern portion we're willing to. make a
Questions, thoughts? No? Okay. In the case of a master plan, the applicant may combine the application for site plan review with the application for master plan review. I don't understand what that means, so.
So the only question I have on that is the second right-of-way access from O'Brien is sort of going through that meadow conservation area. How does that affect this?
So they would have to reserve that space from
They meaning the,
applicant from being conserved. It would have
Okay.
to be
Yeah, and we're good with that.
So
reserved as
it'll
a
have to show
future.
it where the proposed right-of-way for accessing
Right.
will be.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where we need the town's input, because that was their idea. A great idea, by the way.
Right.
But we need help on trying to optimize it for what the vision of the town is.
Okay.
We'd be glad to show it on the plan and, dedicate it or whatever is required to preserve it.
thank you. Any other comments or questions? So there's a whole lot in the plan about restricted infrastructure encroachment. So let me read number 2. Staff recommends the board discuss with the applicant locating the site access to the east in order to eliminate natural resource impacts.
Yeah, so the, sorry, I have a, for your benefit, I have a cold, which is why I keep blowing my nose too. It's like you haven't had a cold in 2 years because everyone's been
No,
socially distanced, and then I,
We're all
went out
getting
with
them.
some friends on Friday, and bam.
Yeah.
So the environmental protection standards, these are sort of new to the board, right? This is under the regulations that were adopted in February. Have a much higher bar for impacts to wetlands. And so that's what a lot of this preamble before the red comment is. And so if they have the access as designed, they would have to demonstrate that they meet this higher bar to allow the wetlands impacts, including demonstration that there is no feasible alternative to safe access to the developable portion of the property, and that the impact is the minimum required to accommodate the proposed development. So the question here is, unless they can make that justification, they should be providing access without impacting the wetland at all.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
Thank you. When we were contemplating this, so we were looking at the state regulations had no requirements for impact on the wetlands. When we met with Marla, and very helpful, we talked about what the criteria for that was, and we have to demonstrate, that the impact is minimal and required and needed. And what I'd like to do is just mention that the access to the site is one of the most important design characteristics that we looked at on the site, because when we want patients, when they turn on the Tilley Drive and we want them to come into the site, we want them to make, general a wayfinding, visual wayfinding to the front entrance of the building. So when they come in the driveway, they know exactly where they're going. And we had room to provide drop-off and circulation here. So that was the major driver for bringing the entrance there and having that approach. The building square footage, being what it is, didn't give us an opportunity to slide that to the east. So what we're showing on the plan here is the actual needed and required access to the building for patients, and it does encroach on that wetlands. But we believe they're class 3 wetlands, and there is opportunity within your regulations to have a discussion about the minimal impacts of that and provide some overriding information about the need to do that. And that's driven primarily to ensure that we've got good patient access into the building. And we weren't really able to move the building to be able to go around those wetlands, so.
Questions, comments, board? Marla?
I have a quick question. Is there a plan that shows where the proposed driveway and how it impacts the buffer, just so we can understand it a little more, how much we're talking about here?
I think so, yeah. I think
Can zoom that one
packet
up.
page 10. No, the one you're on, yeah. It's
Or is it-
very,
What about the regular plan? Just,
yeah, the regular plan is just the existing conditions. So in this one,
It is kind of shown sort of, it's the oblong shape where it says wetland seed mix in the big island at the patient drop-off.
Yeah, the wetlands is
Yeah,
roughly in here,
Yeah, you can see it.
yeah, and then the
I think I
the
can draw on
50-foot
it.
buffer is here.
Right, they're both shown.
So
this
the
is
driveway
wetland-
goes through the
and this is
wetlands.
the
Yeah.
wetland
This would
buffer.
be the wetlands, a wetland seed mix here for this area. And this canopy overhang of the building and the drop-off area would be impacting.
Class 2 or Class 3 that I'm looking at?
Class 3.
Right, and so there's different regulations for class 3 now that there didn't used to be. And some of those, just flipping back to the packet page. So in the case of a class 3, the board can grant a modification of the wetland standards if the modification meets all the standards, A through D, which are about minimum required, no undue adverse impact to the character or the ability to treat stormwater, and then the specific wetlands and functions. But the first one, I think, is really important, that it's the minimum required to accommodate the proposed development, because that points back to the previous ones for wetlands in general, which is alternative access, does not exist.
I'm wondering if it's, I wonder if it's, when I look at this, is it feasible that the building could be rotated 90 degrees to the east, which would make it more, it would make it more north-south as opposed to east-west? And then the driveway gets shifted, I don't know, 20, 30 feet to the east. So the whole building rotates 90 degrees, still stay in the same layout, so you sort of go in and then you take a,
Yeah, I think the constraint is the bisecting Green Mountain Power easement.
Right, the building is
Which is right on the
right up to it.
right on the edge
rear
where the
building line.
Yes, the building,
And that was one of our challenges, to balance all these things and.
How much closer can the building get to the street?
it's up to the front setback right now, I believe.
Right, so that the board has the ability to waive down to minimum of 10
waive
feet.
that?
You can, down to minimum of 10 feet,
What's it at now, 35?
50.
50.
What would that buy us?
What's that? Well, in theory, if you can rotate the building more of a north-south orientation, then it means the driveway could be shifted to the east some, so people would come in and then make a right-hand turn into the drop-off area. And they'd go north and then they'd go east. And we move the whole building closer to the street, which would make it more of a, nicer presence on the street. I'm just trying to play around to keep their layout and rotate.
Right.
That sounds like an optimum idea. The circulation that we show here is when we drop patients off, we want them to pull into the site and be able to drop them off on the passenger side. So you need the requisite circulation to be able to do that. And so that requires a geometry similar to what we have shown here. That's yeah.
May I, excuse
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
if I may add, David White, one of the challenges here, again, want to go back to what Gail talked about, which is the topography. And if you look at the grades on this site, by the time you get to Tilley Drive, it has dropped considerably. And so that if you try to do the drop-off facing Tilley Drive, you're actually on the lower level, which means that all your patient care is going to be underground with your deliveries above ground, and the parking is then behind the building, and they've got to go down 20 feet to get to the front entrance, was on the opposite side of the building. So when you look at designing a site like this, you've got to look at the relationship among all of those factors. So because the zoning appropriately says, look, let's put the parking behind, we've got to deal with the fact that we've got a fixed elevation with this 100-foot wide Green Mountain Power right-of-way. We can't change that. And we've got the elevation increasing above that. And how do we get the parking there to be handicapped accessible and and friendly for the patients and their family members who are bringing them to the site. How do you make that handicap accessible? And how do you make it convenient so that they can get to the front door? And around on the Tilley Drive side doesn't do that, nor does the east side, because the east side is now even further downhill. And so the design here puts all of the patient access close to the parking, as close as we can get it. Frankly, we'd like it closer than it is, but we've got that 100-foot right-of-way that bifurcates the site. But it works because it's a grade that works relative to handicapped accessibility, and you've got visual access from Tilley Drive and from the parking right to where the entrance is, and you get the all the back of the house activities at the lower level, at the lowest part of the site. So believe us that this has been very carefully vetted and thought about in terms of how all those relationships. And you're asking great questions, but we've thought about them. The design team has worked on them, and we believe this is the optimal design on this site. But we're really getting at the core question. If this doesn't work for you folks, we need to know that, because we can't go forward and continue what will be incredibly expensive detailed design work and the CON process if this is not going to be acceptable. If it's not, we need to know that, and we'll need to figure out what we do from there.
Right.
So this is a core discussion right here.
You're really threading a needle through a bunch of different
Exactly.
issues and impediments, I get it.
Exactly. It's threading the needle through a lot of different things.
Yep. So here's one question. You know, I think the crux of the regulations is minimally required, you know, and I guess one thing I wonder is if you hear from us that we're amenable to a front yard setback reduction, you know, getting closer to Tilley Drive, if you could reprogram some of your floor area so that you move more, you know, on the right side of the site, you know, under the area where it says UBMMC, OSC, more towards the front of the site, and you can pull the entrance further to the right or, you know, away from the wetlands, would you be able to have a larger two-way drop off and exit that goes around the wetlands so that you're not impacting the wetlands with the main access to the parking lot? It's not as direct, straight shot in, but if you would be more impacting the buffer rather than the actual wetland, you know, it's more of is that more of the minimal invasiveness?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to just mention that the very first thing we did when we were presented with this site after we selected, it's okay, how can we work with this? Is this site going to work? And most of the discussion around our planning for this is just exactly what we were talking about now.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get patients into the site, make it visible, proximate, and convenient? And secondly, how do we accommodate the program in such a way as we're able to create a great entrance for the entrance of the building, and then tuck the second lower levels downhill so we could take advantage of the site constraints.
Yeah.
So we looked at this whole thing, and we came to the conclusion that this was the most minimal impacts that we could have in that area. We worked very hard to move that building farther to the right, and we weren't able to achieve that.
I'm not suggesting moving it farther to the right, because I see that you have all of your stormwater, you know, retention ponds there.
Yeah.
I'm saying you move some of the mass of the programming closer to the street that allows you to pull some of the mass of the programming away from the wetlands, and that access road can get to be enlarged, and it sort of just circumnavigates the wetlands, and you don't get the one that cuts right through the wetland.
I don't know if Thomas Morris, do we have a floor plan?
I don't have a floor plan, but I think part of the challenge with that end of the building is that's the surgical suite.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the surgical suite, as a functional requirement, has a clean core in the middle.
Mhm.
That clean core is already too small for them because of the fact that we're so pinched east to west. There would be no way to change that, the geometry of that rectangle, to make it pull more towards the street, because the only space to give up is that clean core, and it's already very narrow. So I don't have a plan, but you have a perimeter of surgical suites with a clean core in the middle, there's no way to change that shape. But if we were able to find a way and pull the building and skinny it, the road back to the parking lot would still be where it's at.
No, you would. My thought was whether you made rather than a one-way patient drop-off, that would have to become wider and become two-way. So you might, you would have your drop-off still, passenger side drop-off, but then you would also have your egress there, and
You'd
you
have a little
would
slip lane in. You'd
right,
come in, it'd just be
right.
one driveway, one.
And
one
then you
straight
could
conduit to the back of the parking lot.
right. And then you still might impact some of the wetlands, but looks like you would almost be protecting the wetlands. You would be definitely impacting the buffer, but it's a way to compromise and still, meet the regulations, which
Because visually, right now, it's like you're blowing right through.
Right.
And we're like, hey.
And maybe this site's not gonna work. I mean, that's something we'll just have to take a look at. What I wanted to point to is that the way the circulation is, we like the one-way because you're dropping off cars, parking, unloading, and so on.
Yep.
Giving enough room for wheelchairs and so on and so forth.
Right, the idea is that people who are coming to the site, employees, don't go into this drop-off. They're going straight to the parking area.
Yep.
Loading and deliveries are going directly to this area and going back out. They're not coming into this
Right.
drop-off. So all of a sudden, combining all of that into one area is really
I
kind of
didn't say it was
problematic.
ideal. I just said I was trying to find a way to.
Yeah, I know. We
No,
appreciate that.
Appreciate the thought, and
Yeah.
again, we've had a lot of discussions about
Sure.
how this could possibly work. And that, that is part of the challenge here, is trying to keep those two separate. Because again, when patients are coming in and being dropped off and picked up, vehicles may be standing there for a little while, parking there for a little while for the ease of patients getting in and out.
Another way to look at this, that the geometry of the footprint is pretty much dictated by code and what the requirements are. The thing that's really hurting us here, and the penalty on the site, is that Green Mountain Power, Champlain Water District right of way, because we're having to crowd everything on the front side of that. If we had our druthers, we want to move that actually back a little farther, have more room to maneuver in front of the building. It's just we're not able to do that in this case.
Well, the other thing, Dave, is that even if we were to skinny the building and eliminate that far western portion that goes straight to the back parking lot, we still have to come into the drop-off and come back out to the west because we can't cross the right-of-way straight across. The grades don't work. It's too low. So Gail, if you point to the drop-off canopy, you draw a line straight up, we cannot go through there. We have to go back out to the west and then cross there.
Right. But what I'm saying is that the wetlands is pretty much where that big grass berm is.
Yes.
So you drop off, go back out, and come. Like I said, it's not ideal. I was just trying to sort of offer a compromise. It's basically just getting rid of that straight shot that cuts across.
So assuming we weren't able to mess with the geometry of the building per se, and we're kind of constrained here and here in the loading dock and such, does the wetland intrude in this area here, Gail?
Yes.
Okay. So taking up what you were talking about, if we're able to come in and then run this up more in this area and liberate this for wetland, that's what you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. I understand.
Yeah.
So we would have to have a wide enough, we'd have to have the drop-off area, but then you need to have one lane going up and then a lane that's coming down. So what would happen is this would kind of disappear, and this road boundary would come over in this, somewhere in this area. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, we can look at that, and, that's a.
I mean, I'm talking, this still impacts the buffer. I mean, is that any issues from a regulatory standpoint?
I don't believe that there are any different regulations for wetlands as there are for buffers. Though, I'm not seeing any differences in the regulations. Though, that being said, I think that, that one of the standards is the encroachment represents the least possible impact of the specific resource. it's less impact to have an impact to a buffer than it is to wetland, sort of by definition.
Right, so if we're trying to find a compromise that reduces the impacts.
The other benefit of that, and I'm not trying to talk against myself here, is it creates more of an open corridor in that area on that side of the property.
Oh, you mean between?
I think one of the downsides to just having one wider access into the site, it forces people that are just dropping people off to go all the way up through the parking lot to turn around.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, right.
That's true.
Yep. Because there you just do a big loop and leave.
Yeah.
Gail, am I mistaken here, and Dave, but didn't you, excuse me, isn't the drop-off pavement right there, that western edge of it, pretty tight to the wetland, and now, is there really additional buffer space where those trees are shown, or whatever the landscaping is?
That's why I was eyeballing it,
I
and
thought
we don't have the benefit of the actual.
I believe this is the buffer where the trees are.
But what I'm getting at is, if hypothetically one were to move that 2-lane road over there, are we really reducing wetland impacts? It's a question, I don't know the answer.
If I could ask the applicant team, is there someone on your team who's on a computer who can use the annotation tools? Because nobody watching this remotely can see your pointer. And so if there's someone like Jeff or someone who, the applicants online, you can grab the annotation tools and sort of draw on or highlight.
Perfect, yeah.
Because nobody watching outside of this room sees that pointer.
Based on the existing conditions plan, I think all the trees in that island are in the buffer, not in the wetland.
That's what I was asking.
Yes.
Right.
Jeff, can you access the?
Let me try.
I think, so we don't forget it, the big issue that you just mentioned is that we need to have people be able to circulate around there, and
I have a quick question, and is this a setback, because can the building as a whole be moved to the east? Or does the topography of the stormwater, is that is that line, the eastern boundary of the building, is that set by setback?
That's set by the stormwater.
The gravel
Gravel
wetland.
wetland, that's what is,
required for the wetland.
that's what's
You're gonna have
required.
this whole slope on either side of the gravel wetland.
Exactly.
Believe me, we wouldn't want that right there if we didn't have to. But it,
Yeah.
you know, they have a certain square footage that they need, and it, you know, they've graded it out, and our building is right at the edge, as was depicted in the section.
You have to grade both sides of it, you can't just have one side graded? Because you can't shift the gravel wetland more to the east?
No, I mean, you can see it in the section, I don't know if you can pull that back up, but it, you know, they've got.
I think Derek knows better, but I think you're limited to 2-to-1 slopes, and
angle of the building.
it has to have a certain volume.
You can't do a kind of retaining wall on the eastern boundary of the gravel wetland, and then, I guess the schematic of the gravel wetland is sort of a canned schematic, and I'm just wondering if it's adaptable to get the building another 10 feet to the right, or to the east.
It might seem schematic, but we sized it, and it's just barely, for the impervious here, just barely the right size, and it's.
Yeah, and it's the low point of the property too, right? So, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, I'm just trying to,
No,
do whatever we can to get the building out of the wetland.
We appreciate all these comments, because this is exactly what we've been doing for the last several months, trying to figure this out.
So the question on the table is, what is the wetland and buffer overlay on this drawing? So is there a way that we could determine that fairly quickly? Jeff, you think?
Well, I had drawn that on earlier, and then I erased it because I didn't want to.
I was gonna say, can you?
Yeah, if you zoom in, you can see the wetland and the buffer.
Take a good
Seeing it, I don't know.
look at that.
Me.
But you're part. Oh, okay.
There it is.
While she's doing that, I would just point out that eliminating the bypass and widening the road at the drop-off, we would have to make that really wide, because we don't want every delivery truck, we don't want every vehicle to go underneath the drop-off canopy.
Right, yeah, I see that.
So we we'd have traffic coming out of the site, we'd have a bypass lane for deliveries, and then we'd have a lane that you could pull in underneath the drop-off canopy to drop off patients on the passenger side.
And what you mentioned is you cannot proceed to the north from that drop-off to take that circulation space farther to the north. Is that what I heard, Thomas?
I'm sorry, say that again.
That if you were to, again, nobody can see this, but if you were to come in to drop off, let's assume you could make this, through here and make it safe. Is there a way that you could get a circulation loop up in here, or is that not feasible given the grades?
I'm fairly certain that when we were working this out with Krebs and Lansing, that
Yep.
everything was getting pushed to the west because of
The grades?
because of the easement. Yes.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, we're only allowed to lower or raise the grade in that buffer by about a foot.
Because of the 20-inch Champlain Water District water line has a coverage requirement.
Right, yeah, got it.
That's within the 100-foot Green Mountain Power
Yeah.
easement that we're talking about.
Yeah, we're not able to really disturb that area, so.
So in the interest of time, do you feel like you have enough feedback from us or input from us? You don't. I see you shaking your head.
No.
Okay. Okay.
We really need clarity. Is this basic concept, because this is going to cost a ton of money
Sure.
and a ton of time.
We
Does
understand
this
and respect
work?
that.
Is this acceptable? If not, we need to know it. Because we've spent a lot of time thinking this through.
Yep.
And you're asking great questions, but believe us, we've spent a lot of time on
Right.
it. And if this isn't, we don't want to take it the next step in terms of the detailed design
Sure.
and certificate of need process with the Green Mountain Care Board and so forth, if this isn't going to be acceptable. Generically, they're going to be details and things
Sure.
we haven't reviewed on this, but the basic layout, we need to know that and very clearly tonight.
So-
I have a question for staff, because I'm looking at these standards. C and D will not have an undue adverse effect on the ability of the property to adequately treat stormwater from the site. And because of the way the grade is, these wetlands are not treating any stormwater, so that's not the issue. The issue is it having an undue adverse effect upon specific wetland function and values identified in the field delineation? So the question is, I'm being facetious here, but what is our city wetland delineation wetland delineation function values analyst of the city of South Burlington say about? In other words, they've had looked at the wetland.
Right, so
and
they
somebody
haven't
looked at
provided
Joe
us with their
McBraze's
report.
And agreed or not agreed.
They have not yet provided us that report, I don't think, or did you?
We
Either
have
way.
not.
But
To
there's
me,
also
to me, that's
standard
the
A,
issue.
right?
How
Because
much-
you're missing standard A, which is the modification shall be the minimum required to accommodate the proposed development. And I think what our conversations to this point have focused on is what is the minimum required to accommodate the proposed development?
And that's kind of where this design, I know we've had a lot of great conversation here and stuff, but it keeps coming back that the layout, we believe, is the least intrusive on the wetlands and the layout that meets our needs. So as far as the value of the wetlands, you touched upon that. They're class 3. They're ephemeral wetlands. I mean, you can go out there in August and, they're basically catching all the surface. It's glacial till, clay, and so all the precipitation comes down through the hayfield and just precipitates in that area. It's not associated with a stream or floodplain or anything like that.
So to evaluate wetlands functions and values, they have done a wetland delineation, which they'll be submitting as part of their report, and that says, this wetland is a class 3 because it has no functions and values for X, Y, and Z, and it has limited functions and values for P, Q, and R. So at that point,
And
we'd
they
be
can
evaluating.
describe how they're trying to meet standard A and how they've tried to minimize the impact based upon the feedback we're giving them.
Right. So it sounds like maybe we've already talked about staff comment number 2, because it's very, if the board considers this, then you should discuss how the impacts are minimized. And then I would maybe move on to staff comment 4.
Okay, which talks about wetland delineation. and asking you to do one.
Yeah, so this is about the future roadway. So the future roadway we haven't really talked about, but Delilah, if you could go back to a map, I can kind of point that out. The city, it might be just page 1 of the packet so that I can draw on the big zoomed out one. Cool. And I'll go back to the zoom. So the city official map has, oh dear, view, fit, okay, has an official map roadway plan to the east here. Oh, that's not very big. East here. And then to the north that does this. And so the mentioned in the beginning of the staff report, this parcel 2 and this parcel 6. Is that how you draw 6? That looks
Yeah,
backwards.
you got it.
Okay.
You got it.
Are owned under the same ownership. So the question here is, this development should ensure that the north-south future roadway can be accommodated. And the concern is because a lot of wetlands exist over on lot 2, and so if there is no ability to build the north-south roadway on lot 2, it'll have to go on lot 6. So this staff comment is asking this applicant, because of the common ownership issue, to demonstrate that the feasibility of constructing the north-south roadway as shown on the official map.
So that certainly would make the project basically not really feasible.
Because there's no room.
So did you look at lot 2? I think Gail started to mention that a little bit.
Well, as I mentioned, when the Maitrey Healthcare was approved a number of years ago, they did show a 100-foot right-of-way on their property.
Yeah, it's not a right-of-way. It's not a right-of-way at all, actually.
It's a proposed easement, I guess.
Yeah, which is weird because that doesn't mean anything. You know,
Is
we've
Bob
really
here?
struggled with that
Would you
ourselves.
like to comment on this, Bob? I'd be happy to. Bob Bouchard with Piscataway Property probably will provide the best clarity.
This way Sue can hear you if you speak into a microphone. Or you can speak into that one as well.
And we'll need, oh no, it's
Thank you, Bob.
He doesn't need to swear. Thanks, Bob.
What is your name, please?
Bob Bouchard with Piscataway Properties, so we're the property owner. So we made accommodations to the city back 20 years ago. They made the request for a 100-foot right-of-way through our property. And we granted that right-of-way. And they've shown it on the official city map forever. And now the request is that an adjoining lot owner make accommodations for this road if they can't put it on lot 2? How is that our responsibility?
Is there a right-of-way? Because the
It's not even as
Mylars-
shown. It's a right of way it's a recorded plat.
But the recording you just did, I'm sorry, this is a sidebar conversation. The
That's
recording you just did calls it a proposed easement, not an actual easement, and that's where our confusion is coming from.
Is there a recorded easement? We're
Not
saying
that
an
we-
easement.
Right, but the plan that you just recorded a couple months ago says proposed or planned right-of-way or planned easement. It doesn't say
The
actual
plat
easement.
shows a 100-foot right of way.
It doesn't use that language. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
Okay. But now you're asking us if we will make accommodations for that elsewhere.
Because our understanding is that you haven't actually provided it. And that, I think that's probably the root of this, because that Mylar doesn't say,
Well, I'm sorry, but that's where we agreed. We gave you the property. You show it on your official city map, and now you just don't want to arbitrarily move it to a different place? I don't see how that's our responsibility. That's all. Enough said.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
May I add to that, which is that two things. One is that we did take a look at the question of whether or not this would impact wetlands. And while we have not done a detailed delineation on Lot 2, we do have some wetlands information, more historic. It goes back, more than 5 years, so it's no longer official, if you will. But according to that earlier information, the 100-foot easement that Bob Bouchard was just referring to does not impact the wetlands themselves. There are places where it touches the wetland buffer zone, but not the wetland. So we believe, based...
Again, David, not our responsibility.
I-
We just said, here's the property that you're asking for.
Yes. I completely agree, Bob, but I just saying, we have done some additional, per the staff's request, and we believe that's there. That said, what the UVM Medical Center has assured us, and Dave, you can confirm this, is that on the northern portion, beyond where the parking lot is, happy to accommodate if you want to swing the road through that area. In the area where the gravel wetlands will be and the building and the parking, it's just not feasible to do that. But if there's a need to do it, that said, if you look at the approved plans for the O'Brien property on the north side, if I may borrow this for just a moment, I'm going to borrow the pointer. The access point for them is actually several hundred feet. I can't tell you how far, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's well over here. So, the connection through the residential neighborhood is here, which we've already said will accommodate, we'll work with you. But this one, where they're coming through, I don't see how that conveniently connects. If there's a way that you want to see along the northern portion here that we're not planning to develop, we're happy to work with you on that. But we do believe that you'll be able to accommodate this road. I'm not guaranteeing it. We haven't done a current delineation, and we don't believe it's our responsibility to do that. It's off our site. But we believe that this, as shown, will impact perhaps some Class 2 wetland buffers. We do not think, based on the older information we have, that it impacts the wetlands themselves. And given that the location of that road is more in this vicinity, while we'll work with you, we don't think this is going to impact our property in a practical way.
When you're talking about the delineation that you looked at, are you looking at the same delineation that's shown on page 5 of the packet?
I don't know what that is.
We can pull it up. Yep.
Could be, I don't know off the top of my head.
Where, what sheet? Well, I have loud hearing, so somebody's got to point this out.
This is the lot 2. This is where they're showing the dashed line, and she's asking about this wetlands.
That certainly looks similar to.
It is, I think the
Thanks,
point
that's
is, we
helpful.
went back and took a look at what was in the existing file, the last survey.
Okay.
And we can't stamp that for anything, but we did
Sure.
try to take a look at what the impacts might be.
So, Marla, where do we go from here in terms of this issue?
So going back to the substance of the staff comment, we want to make sure that this project does not preclude development of a roadway on the official map. And so I guess the thing for the board to determine is whether they want to ask the applicant to do a slightly more in-depth evaluation, or whether this sort of desktop level evaluation is adequate to make that determination.
Evaluation of
Whether the official map exact configuration is feasible.
Well, I think also the other question is whether or not there is anything that is shown on the official plot, or, for lot 2, for 100-foot, proposed street right-of-way.
Yeah, so I would love to talk more about that, because we went and looked at our land records and we weren't able to find anything that actually used the term easement. So I would love to be wrong.
They never used the term easement.
You did. Okay.
Right of way.
Okay.
It's
That's what's on the recorded plats.
a dedicated right-of-way?
It's a 100-foot wide right of way for the proposed 12B extension
extension.
I do see that on the conditions plan. It says 100-foot right-of-way, future ramp, and then it veers off away, and then it says planned 100-foot wide right-of-way, I-89 off-ramp.
Thank you.
And it's on lot 2, and it sort of goes off. Yep.
Right, so. Where are you looking, Mark?
I don't know how you're asking the applicant to make sure it can fit on their property.
Planned 100-foot right-of-way. Yeah, I guess that was the confusion, because a planned 100-foot right-of-way is not a dedicated right-of-way. But I'd be happy to be wrong, I just don't, that's not what we understood from this language, or from what we were able to locate in the land records.
So, this is a public meeting, right? Bob, I mean, you've conveyed that to the town?
No,
Okay, so what,
it's not going to be. We preserve the property for the city.
okay, got you.
That's what they asked us to do. See, at the end of Tilley Drive, there is an irrevocable offer of dedication to the city. The city owns that 100 or 80 feet. Here, they didn't make the request for a irrevocable offer of dedication. They asked to preserve the property for them for this potential
Okay, got you.
road extension.
Right.
And we said, fine, we're happy to do that.
Whoa, okay. So, Marla, I need some guidance from you about where we go next. Have we, do we have more research to do on this, or?
Well, I think Dave just got to the heart of the matter, which is a difference in
Language.
legal commitments versus,
Can I mention just one, I just have one question for clarification? What does this have to do with lot 6? That's, I mean, I'm just from a
yeah.
objective
So the
standpoint.
question is,
Fair
to
question.
not preclude the development of, because lot 2 is so much wetlands, and the lands are under common ownership, then any development in the vicinity of this future road should be cognizant of the ability of that future road to be developed in the future.
We certainly subscribe to that. The issue that we've got is not, is what's advertised as what we're buying, in terms of being able to develop the lot. That was represented to us that said 100-foot right away was on separate premises, and then we didn't factor that into anything in terms of understanding. So we'll be happy to do whatever we need to do to accommodate the town. We just don't feel that we have an obligation to do any engineering or evaluation related to that, even given it's not on a site that we're anticipating buying. I mean, that's just, and
I don't know that I can have more productive dialogue about this at this time.
okay.
I want to ask something like, so the city's had these things on the official map for a while, and why aren't we trying to promote the use of an existing right-of-way that was on an official map, such that instead of having yet another brand-new driveway, we have people building roads to public spec as part of a development in a planned area where it's been on the map for 20 or 30 years. And then it's turned over to the city, and the city's plowing that and maintaining it. Why aren't we doing that?
I think that's what we're saying in staff comment number 2 and in staff comment number 6. Nope. Yep, 6. Which is, if the site access were to the east, we would be furthering development of the planned roadway.
Okay, all right. All right, good. I'm glad you clarified that. All right, I now understand it. It's like we
So
have these
it's-
things on the map and they never get built, and they just sit there and they have these funny little stubs all over the place.
Yeah, and sometimes it's difficult to kind of try and say, because of the way the board reviews projects and reviews one staff comment at a time, sometimes it's a little hard to say. The title says, move the driveway to the east, and then there's like 5 reasons for it. You know, and that's kind of the way this is set up. But except it doesn't have the title in red saying, move the driveway to the east, and here's 5 reasons why. Okay.
But on the other hand, speaking to play devil's advocate and recognize the issue that this is the city's right of way, that the city wants this road to be built and us bearing some of the cost for the wetland delineation in that fuzzy line, which is what it's mostly been, you know, a little, there's a road then I think if it's gonna be our road at the end, then we should have an obligation to study its potential impacts.
That's certainly within the realm of possibility, but not within the realm of the authority of this board. And I can take that back to the city manager's office.
Okay.
One quick comment to kind of follow up on this is that in all the documents that we had seen, as well as the official map, it refers to this road connecting through. It's always been connected with the future 12B exit. And so that's just how it's been, what we understood was envisioned was it was related to the off-ramp for that exit 12B, whenever that future exit happens.
Okay. It is 10 till 10. We do not go beyond 10 if we can help it. So we're going to have to continue this at another time. And I'm just wondering if we should take some public comment now.
Well, why don't we also just make sure that there's no other big red items that we can't at least.
Well, but let's see if we've only got 10 minutes left. If there are any members of the public, it's gonna be
Okay.
continued anyway.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Just to double check.
Yep.
Are there any members of the public who would like to comment? Do you see any online, Delilah? Okay. All right, so let's go ahead for a few more minutes.
I think all the comments are sort of equally sized.
So are we on 5?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to read this. The board should direct the applicant to provide a 50 or 60-foot right-of-way on the subject property, dimensions to be determined based on development plan for the northern portion of the parcel, from the O'Brien roadway to the planned north-south roadway in a location that is viable given the topography. If master plan is required, it should include the roadway connection.
So this is on the previous page, sort of location A. And I think that they've already said that they can do that.
And we'd be happy to work with you. We don't know where you want it.
Yeah, you'll have to coordinate your plans with O'Brien Brothers.
Can I ask a quick question in that regard? Bob Luther again.
Sure, go ahead, Bob.
Why are you encouraging potential commercial traffic to go through the residential neighborhood? Just a question. At A. It's not gonna be a one-way road.
Do you have a response to that?
I don't know how much commercial traffic would go through that.
No.
In what way are we encouraging it?
Am I reading that correctly? Do you wanna connect, did I misread that? Do you wanna connect the O'Brien's project through this development? Is that right?
Right, so the line that the pink line I've just drawn is the roadway that the board agreed to as part of the O'Brien.
You wanna connect that to the proposed future road, all right, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted to connect it through this development.
No.
My mistake.
And Marlo, what you've drawn there is exactly what we assumed we'd be talking about, so.
Okay.
Yeah, my mistake.
So are we set on that? Okay. Number 6, staff recommends the board should direct the applicant to provide a driveway connection from the site to the north-south original map roadway. Staff notes that if the site were accessed via the east, this objective would be addressed.
Yeah, I might need to draw on it again. Draw. So if B due south is the official map roadway, And I understand that this doesn't overlay your development, but if, say, the building is somewhere like here, which I know it's not, it's kind of off the page, there should be a driveway that goes boop, out to this future road.
If we made that connection, I guess that would be from our property, from our site, if we made it further north. Yeah, if you draw your road back that you had from A to the road, if we made a connection up there, would that not be the same as the one you made down there?
Oh, because your parking area is like back here.
Yeah.
Right, so if you connected like that, that would have the same effect, is that what you're saying?
I'm asking, yes.
I think so.
Elevationally, it's much more beneficial. We have, close to the building, there's all the utilities in there and a pretty significant drop off in elevation that a driveway just wouldn't meet the town standards. It's too steep.
The only thing that I would think here from, and we'll be happy to work in concept with that, is that we really don't want to make this, our parking lot, as some sort of a shortcut, if you will. So that would have some concern for us.
For safety.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the intention is to definitely be discouraging. It's more like a interconnectivity kind of thing rather than a
shortcut, yeah.
Right.
Speedway.
So it's not something that you would intentionally take if you wanted to shortcut
It's
it.
really not I guess from our standpoint, it's not a functional entrance or exit for us. So that's probably the best way I could say it.
But it's
Or wouldn't be.
It's increasing connectivity to one of the largest residential developments we have, which is a nice thing.
Yeah, and we're good with that. It's just the connection between our parking lot and the road. We just don't think that's a wise idea from our perspective.
Have a little bike path.
Yeah. We'll be, as soon as the congestion has Chittenden County, people will find that and, they'll be all over the place. Yeah.
Okay. Let's
They'll use it to bypass the future stop signalized intersection for the road, 12B, and so the red light will be red, so they'll cut through the property.
Well, in all seriousness, the intention is to have it be undesirable for that kind of behavior.
I'm not making light of it. I'm just saying it that from our standpoint, we just don't believe it serves a functional purpose. But we'd be happy to talk about it.
So that kind of covers number 7. So 8 questions whether the board should invoke a traffic study. And given that it's almost 10 o'clock and we're going to have to continue this, should we make that decision tonight so that it can be done?
Yeah, we're already doing a traffic study.
You are?
Yes, we've already met with
Okay.
Marla and Paul and talked about it, and
Perfect.
our traffic engineer's working on it now.
Great.
So we're doing it.
So.
Okay, good, thanks.
So
For us to have our
invoke
own-
a technical review,
Right.
yeah. And the reason we're thinking is either it's going to generate a high number of trips, or they're going to use a site-specific study to say it doesn't generate a high number of trips. So either one of those things probably needs technical review.
So would someone like to move that we invoke technical review of the traffic study?
I'll make a motion that we invoke third-party technical review of the applicant's traffic study.
Okay, I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, I think that we'll stop for now, for tonight. Marla, when would we be able to pick this up again?
So I have 20 minutes available on May 4th. If that is not enough time, we have to push to May whatever.
Let's see how many
thing
more
is.
comments. Well, how many, 20 minutes you said?
Mm-hmm.
There's 3 more comments.
And obviously these things are approximate, but if everybody behaves themselves.
Well, I mean, could we give it a try? See what we can do?
I can't have it, it's still just sketch, so
Right.
more feedback.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Okay.
What was that date? I'm sorry.
So, what I just wanted to mention, I know you folks have done a wonderful job giving us input, and I appreciate all the complexities of this and ancient history and so on. We're hoping to do our, I don't know whether that will, obviously, we're compelled to be here, we'll be here. But it may have a schedule implications for our CON application, because we wouldn't be able to go forward unless we had a fully defined scope of work that we would be trying to anticipate, so. And it's not your problem, just, you guys are
Right.
doing you folks are doing what you need to do, and just wanted to just make you aware of that.
So I'm a little bit confused. You said May 4th, but I think that's a Wednesday?
It is, yeah. May 3rd is Eid. So we're not having a meeting that night.
So you're meeting on Wednesday the 4th?
We're pushing to Wednesday because to not conflict with the holiday.
Clear. Thank you.
Excuse us for a second.
And I'll join you from Nashville.
Sure. So this is an optional sketch. You've chosen to kind of run this up the flagpole before us.
Yeah, and we agree, we know that.
So you certainly can go ahead and submit your CON if you want to.
Well, I appreciate that, and we could, but basically, we would like the wisdom of this body
I get
to
it.
help us inform what the potential scope of the
Right,
project for, so
right.
that we would think that has a greater value.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and obviously any creative solutions you might want to bring back to the table in terms of that whole wetland issue, you know?
Yep.
We'd certainly welcome anything we can.
We certainly will we will be looking at in detail.
So that's it for tonight. We don't even need to have a motion to conclude tonight. Thank you for your patience with us, and
Do we need a motion to continue the sketch to May 4th? No, okay.
No, I don't think you do, because you wouldn't need to have a motion to close it. So, no.
Okay.
so good luck,
All right, well, thank you.
and we will see you back here in May.
All right, thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
time and your consideration.
Thank you.
Need a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
No.
Move.
Other business?
Is there any other business? We've already done the minutes, so I think that's it for us tonight.
Recording stopped.
Thanks.